Li Mei's Sword of Destiny. Chapter 708. Uncle Black and the others quietly departed. Only the Medicine Sovereign knew that they didn't disturb Qin Wentian. Since a supreme existence like the Eastern Sage Great Emperor was paying attention to the royal sacred region, he would be able to see everything there with just a sweep of his will. In addition, the Eastern Sage Great Emperor came down to the royal sacred region to accept a disciple. This meant that the royal sacred region would be exposed to the eyes of the entire immortal realms. At that time, the Eastern Sage Great Emperor wouldn't be the only one paying attention to the royal sacred region. Maybe the Eastern Sage Great Emperor himself wouldn't pay too much attention to the royal sacred region, but the others would. Because every action of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor would attract countless gazes, let alone something as grand as accepting a disciple. Hence, Uncle Black and the others could only leave. The rumors became reality. The royal sacred city and the entire royal sacred region were in an uproar. News of a supreme existence from the immortal realms outside the royal sacred region came here to accept a disciple. This supreme existence was known as the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, and it was unknown how terrifying he was. The Sacred Emperor, the hegemon of the royal sacred region, if placed in front of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, was like the difference between a mortal and a sacred emperor. For an existence like the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, killing a sacred emperor would be as easy as stepping on an ant. Nobody knew how strong the Eastern Sage Great Emperor was, hence they could only use this to describe his strength. In any case, as long as there was a chance to become the disciple of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, even if he was an ordinary mortal, his status would instantly skyrocket. Even the sacred emperors of the royal sacred region would have to be respectful to him. How could such a rumor not cause the entire royal sacred region to be in an uproar? In fact, even the war between the Medicine Sovereign Valley and the royal sacred sect was temporarily forgotten. Right now, the Eastern Sage Great Emperor accepting a disciple was the most important matter in the royal sacred region. It was just that right now, nobody knew how the Eastern Sage Great Emperor wanted to accept a disciple. However, the royal sacred region was still filled with experts from the outside worlds. All of them were extremely powerful, but as for how strong they were, nobody knew. Many people guessed that there would definitely be experts stronger than the Sacred Emperor in the royal sacred region. It was just that they were all hidden in the crowd and didn't reveal their strength. Saint Royal City was still the most bustling and prosperous place in the royal sanctuary. Most of the foreign visitors gathered in Saint Royal City, which often caused quite a stir. Not only that, there were some outsiders who were extremely arrogant and despotic, as though they were unexcelled in the world. They basically looked down on the local experts of the royal sacred sect and referred to them as country bumpkins, causing many to be enraged. However, many of them didn't dare to say anything. Once a conflict occurred in a tea house and there was someone who acted out of anger because he was mocked as a country bumpkin. Not only that, he was a genius from an aristocrat clan and was instantly killed along with a few of his brothers. The people in the tea house all kept quiet out of fear, not daring to say anything. Even that aristocrat clan didn't dare to seek revenge. These outsiders had no idea how strong they were, and their combat prowess was too high. Even their background was unknown. It was best for them to not cause trouble. Some of the outsiders also grew more and more arrogant. Many of them were lowly existences in the immortal realms and didn't dare to offend anyone. But it was different in a country bumpkin's world. They had a transcendent feeling that these country bumpkins were like ants to them. They could control their fates, and these ant-like bumpkins didn't even dare to resist. If one had to use a word to describe it, it would be a sense of superiority. The vast majority of people from the immortal realms were the same as Zaixian and Lu Zian. They felt a sense of superiority in the royal sacred region, feeling that they were a tier higher than others. The vast majority of people had a sense of superiority. Those who were arrogant and despotic were only a portion of them. After all, for those who came here from the immortal realms, there were some truly extraordinary geniuses who wanted to see if they could enter the tutelage of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. Although they were arrogant and had a sense of superiority, they disdained to bully these country bumpkins in the royal sacred region. To them, this wasn't something glorious at all. At the rooftop of the inn where the first guests from the immortal realms arrived, there were several people drinking wine. Two of them were none other than Zaixian and Lu Zian. Recently, Zaixian's mood wasn't very good. It was all because of that evil-looking young man. This fellow wasn't simply lustful. He cultivated an evil art and used women as cultivation furnaces. Every time he enjoyed the women, they would all die. Although there were many beautiful female attendants in the royal sacred sect, and Zaixian had gifted many of them to that evil-looking young man, it wasn't enough for that evil-looking young man to crazily use beauties as cultivation furnaces. Not only did he want women, he wanted beautiful women as well. After a few days, that evil-looking young man would even capture beauties in the royal sacred sect. He even had designs on Lu Zian, his eyes gleaming with an evil light when he stared at her, causing Zaixian to be extremely unhappy. However, he discovered that ever since that evil-looking young man started using beauties as cultivation furnaces, his cultivation base had already soared to the peak of the 3rd level of celestial phenomenon. This caused even Zaixian to feel a trace of excitement in his heart. If one tossed aside their conscience, this cultivation art was truly an extremely good one. Not only could he enjoy beauties, he could also raise his cultivation base. Hence, Zaixian didn't chase that evil-looking young man away, and continued to capture people for him. Hence, during these few days, the news of the missing beauties in the sacred royal city circulated like wildfire. And this was only exposed after a beautiful genius from a major power went missing. At this moment, a row of silhouettes flashed through the air. One of them was clad in white and had an extraordinary handsomeness. His eyes swept downwards before he actually descended, heading towards the open-air inn. The countenances of Zaixian and Lu Zian turned solemn. A cold light flickered in Zaixian's eyes while Lu Zian had a look of bewilderment on her face. After which, a smile appeared on her face as she stared at the descending silhouette. The experts of the royal sacred sect who were protecting Zaixian all had cold expressions on their faces as they stared at the descending silhouette, their eyes flashing with killing intent. Qin Wentian, he is Qin Wentian. At this moment, a shocked voice rang out as a commotion broke out in the inn. When Qin Wentian landed, many people hurriedly opened up a path for him. Right now in the royal sacred region, who wouldn't know of Qin Wentian's name? Qin Wentian sat down not far away from Zaixian. There were also experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley beside him. Right now, the royal sacred sect and the Medicine Sovereign Valley seemed to have reached a tacit agreement. Both sides didn't continue to clash, but the moment they met, the atmosphere of mutual hostility would naturally be unavoidable. Sitting at the table, Qin Wentian poured himself a cup of wine and drank it. He had just finished his cultivation when he heard of the recent happenings in the sacred royal city. This included the news of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor accepting a disciple, as well as the arrogance of the external world visitors, and even the news of the abduction of the beauties of the sacred royal city. He felt extremely infuriated in his heart. They were all cultivators and yet they dared to act so brazenly, disregarding the lives of others. How preposterous! I've heard the word country bumpkin from your mouth before. Although you are someone from the royal sacred sect, you should be cultivating in the external world, right? Qin Wentian stared at Zaixian. His cold eyes flickered with a light that caused the hearts of others to palpitate. At this moment, Zaixian didn't dare to underestimate Qin Wentian like he did back then. This demon-level character who had a violet gold astral soul, his combat prowess was simply too strong. He couldn't help but to admit that if they were at the same level, his combat prowess in the immortal realms would also be extremely terrifying. So what if I am? Zaixian's eyes gleamed with coldness. He was actually somewhat jealous of Qin Wentian. This country bumpkin of the royal sacred sect actually had a violet gold astral soul, and was even protected by an immortal ranked expert, allowing him to escape from the royal sacred sect. People from the immortal realms aren't much at all. You keep referring to others as country bumpkins. Doesn't that mean that you are even inferior to a country bumpkin like me? Qin Wentian drank a cup of wine as he sarcastically spoke. He was extremely unhappy in his heart about the arrogance and despotism of those people from the immortal realms. At this moment at another table, a few people placed their wine cups down as they stared in the direction of Qin Wentian. One of them had a blood-red glow in his eyes as he exuded an aura of extreme danger. However, after that, a smile appeared on his face as he stared at the people opposite him. The people from this country bumpkin world are also so arrogant. Shueli, do these country bumpkins know that they are country bumpkins? They are short-sighted and have little knowledge. They basically have no idea how vast the immortal realms are, and only know that there are country bumpkin worlds. As the saying goes, the ignorant are fearless. Since they are ignorant, they naturally have nothing to fear. Another person laughed. That's true. Having little knowledge is also a form of sorrow. They don't know that they are at the bottom rung of the immortal realms. How would they know that there are some supreme experts fighting in the immortal realms? If they are unhappy, they can destroy countless country bumpkin worlds with a wave of their hands. They don't know how insignificant they are. A third person nodded. The three of them continued drinking and chatting, treating Qin Wentian's words like air. Their sense of superiority was obvious. Zai Xian laughed when he heard this. He similarly didn't reply to Qin Wentian. The words of these three were already sufficient. In the inn, many people had expressions of anger on their faces. These people truly had no one in their eyes. No matter what, Qin Wentian was the most famous genius of their royal sacred sect. His talent was extremely high, yet he was actually mocked by them. Qin Wentian, these people from the immortal realms are too used to being arrogant. However, it's best not to antagonize them. How would they know that with your talent they would look up to you sooner or later? They are the ones who are ignorant. Some people felt indignant in their hearts, yet they didn't dare to say anything. They could only transmit their voices to Qin Wentian, venting their unhappiness. The ignorant are fearless. That's right, only the weak would like to flaunt their sense of superiority. Because they are existences at the bottom rung of the immortal realms, they are used to being suppressed. Qin Wentian calmly spoke, his words causing the other three to frown. Sir Qin's words are truly inspiring. Xian is filled with admiration. At this moment, a gentle and melodious voice drifted over. After which, a few silhouettes walked up the stairs. One of them was as beautiful as a celestial maiden, instantly causing the gazes of everyone to be focused on her. Even those from the immortal realms had dazed looks on their faces. This person was none other than the number one beauty in the royal sacred region, Lin Xian. Chapter 709. Xian. An expression of joy appeared on Qin Wentian's face when he saw her. Lin Xian gracefully walked over to Qin Wentian's table and smiled. Sir Qin, you wouldn't mind Xian sitting here, right? Xian, there's no need to be so polite between us. Just take a seat. Qin Wentian smiled. Back then in the immortal martial realm, many people targeted Qin Wentian. Xian had helped Sis Lingshuang, Fan Lu and the others a few times, taking good care of him. Also, although Lin Xian was a peerless beauty, she wasn't as fickle as what others imagined. She only wanted to find a man with extraordinary talent who loved her deeply. It was only normal for any woman to have such thoughts. When Lin Xian heard Qin Wentian's words, her eyes flashed with a smile as she stared at Qin Wentian, as though she could hook away the souls of people. She then sat down beside Qin Wentian. Xian, when did you come to the sacred royal city? Qin Wentian helped Lin Xian pour a cup of wine as he asked with a smile. This maiden was as radiant and beautiful as ever. Her soul-stirring countenance made people want to protect her in their hearts. It's rumored that a supreme existence from the outer realms is recruiting a disciple. Right now, the entire royal sacred region is in an uproar. And since the sacred royal city is the sacred city of the royal sacred region, Xian naturally wanted to join in the liveliness. Lin Xian sipped the wine that Qin Wentian had poured for her. Her gentle gaze landed on Qin Wentian. The last time we parted, I didn't expect that when we met again, Sir Qin would already display such supreme talent. Back then, Xian already knew that with Sir Qin's talent, your accomplishments would surely be extraordinary. But I didn't expect it to be so intense. Right now, Qin Wentian's fame was simply too great. His rise was like a legend in the entire royal sacred region. Who would be able to challenge a heaven chosen from the royal sacred sect when they just broke through to celestial phenomenon? Not only that, it was a battle across realms. What's even more shocking was that no one from the royal sacred sect could defeat him. Qin Wentian was like a living legend, and the royal sanctuary was witnessing his rise. Xian stop teasing me. Qin Wentian laughed. Did I? Lin Xian's beautiful eyes stared unblinkingly at Qin Wentian, causing Qin Wentian to not dare to meet her gaze. Her eyes were simply too mesmerizing. The longer I get to know young Master Qin, the more I realize how outstanding you are. If I had known you were so outstanding, I would have thrown myself at you the first time I met you. At that time you hadn't married the holy maiden yet." Lin Xian'er giggled. She didn't hold back at all. Qin Wentian could only smile bitterly. He was being teased by a beauty like Lin Xian'er again. "Oh yeah, does Sir Qin want to consider taking in a concubine? If you do, you have to consider Xian'er." Lin Xian'er's smile grew even more radiant when she saw the expression on Qin Wentian's face. "Xian'er, don't make fun of me." Being teased by such a beauty, Qin Wentian had no way to be angry. He could only feel awkwardness. "Xian'er is serious." Lin Xian'er pursed her lips, her charming eyes still on Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's soul wasn't stolen away, but the others in the inn weren't far off either. All of them were captivated by her beauty, and when they stared at her flawless countenance, they involuntarily swallowed their saliva, wanting to give her a kiss. They hated themselves for not being Qin Wentian. If they were, they would have directly pounced on her. Such a beauty throwing herself into his arms, and yet he was still a gentleman? He was simply worse than a beast. Zai Xian, Lu Zian and the other guests from the immortal realms were all stunned by Lin Xian'er's beauty. Such a fairy-like beauty was extremely rare even in the immortal realms. Lu Zian, who was also a beauty, had an innate enmity towards Lin Xian'er. Her eyes were filled with unhappiness, especially when Zai Xian glanced at her and Lin Xian'er. It was obvious that he was comparing the two of them. Zai Xian's jealousy towards Qin Wentian grew even more intense. Not only did this fellow have shocking talent, he even had the favor of such a beauty, taking the initiative to throw herself into his arms. To think that there would be such a peerless beauty in a country bumpkin world. Xueli was initially angered by Qin Wentian's sarcastic words, but after seeing Lin Xian'er, his anger vanished, replaced by a fiery heat. Such a peerless beauty was truly rare. If there was such a beauty in the immortal realms, she would surely become the exclusive property of some powerful characters, not allowing others to touch her. Who would have thought that they would encounter such a beauty in this country bumpkin world today? Although they weren't fond of lust and had strong control over their desires, that was only relative. In this country bumpkin world, their desires were clearly exposed. If they encountered such a beauty, wouldn't it be a delicacy if they could have a taste of her? "Brother Xueli, I didn't expect this. Haha, this peerless beauty seems to be very flirtatious." Another person laughed, his eyes flashing with greed. Lin Xian'er furrowed her brows, but soon after she understood. She knew the lust of men. She had seen it in the eyes of too many men. She was very clear that if she was just an ordinary mortal, she wouldn't know what kind of nightmares she would encounter. These people were from the immortal realms, hence they didn't fear her at all. "Sir Qin, these people from the immortal realms are truly disappointing." Lin Xian'er suppressed her anger as she spoke. "Indeed." Qin Wentian placed his wine cup down as he coldly spoke. "A bunch of filthy people, claiming to be extraordinary, calling us bumpkins. How sad. How interesting." The three guests from the immortal realms clenched their fists, shattering their wine cups. An instant later, whistling sounds rang out in the air as several silhouettes appeared. All of them had sharp expressions and powerful auras as they stood behind Xueli and the other two. Xueli's eyes gleamed with a blood-red light. He played with the shattered wine cup in his hands as he stared at Lin Xian'er. "Capture that woman for me." "Wait." At this moment, a voice rang out from afar. After which, the crowd only saw an evil-looking young man speeding over. The moment he landed on the roof of the inn, his eyes were fixed on Lin Xian'er. With a wave of his hand, strands of evil qi gushed forth, drifting towards Lin Xian'er. Lin Xian'er furrowed her brows and retreated to the side of Qin Wentian, only to see the evil-looking young man taking a deep breath as a look of intoxication flashed in his eyes. "Who would have thought that I would be able to see such a peak-grade product here? The fragrance of a virgin, how fragrant. Even if I have to lose my cultivation base, I'm willing to do so. After I obtain you, I will definitely enjoy myself for a period of time before absorbing your essence energy. I really can't bear to part with you." The eyes of the evil-looking young man gleamed with an evil light, incomparably intoxicated. He stared at Zai Xian and spoke, "Brother Zai, help me capture this woman and I will give you the thing you want." Zai Xian's countenance stiffened as he stared at the evil-looking young man. "You know what I want?" Naturally, who wouldn't want such a cultivation art? The evil-looking young man flashed a meaningful smile at Zai Xian, causing Zai Xian to frown. And indeed, Lu Zian moved further away from Zai Xian, her countenance extremely unsightly to behold. Haha, Zai Xian, you've already helped me so many times. What's the harm in helping me one more time? The evil-looking young man laughed uproariously, his words causing Lin Xian, to stare at Zai Xian as she icily spoke. You are someone from the royal sacred sect, yet you actually helped him abduct females from the royal sacred region to provide for his evil cultivation art. Zai Xian's countenance stiffened as he silently cursed that evil-looking young man in his heart. What a bastard! The royal sacred sect proclaims themselves to be the hegemon of this world. Seems like they truly don't treat the people of the royal sacred region as humans. First they threatened Grand Xia and Yi, and now they even did such a heartless thing. If the royal sacred sect isn't destroyed, the royal sacred region will never be at peace. Qin Wentian's countenance was extremely cold. He wasn't a saint of morals, but as a member of this world, how could he not be enraged when he heard that the people from the other world didn't treat the people of this world seriously, killing and humiliating them as they pleased? And today in this inn, because he coincidentally met Lin Xian, he could clearly see that many of these people from the other world didn't even place this world in their eyes at all. They wanted to do whatever they wanted, and had no reservations whatsoever. If this continued on, the royal sacred region would be in dire straits. What made Qin Wentian the most furious was still Zai Xian. As a member of the royal sacred sect, the leader of the royal sacred region, not only did he not stand on the side of the royal sacred region, he even helped the people from the other world to commit evil deeds. How despicable was this? He simply had no bottom line. The expressions of the others in the inn were also extremely unsightly when they stared at Zai Xian. Their eyes were filled with hatred for a common enemy. The incident of the missing young maiden in the sacred royal city was actually caused by Zai Xian? Was this the holy land in their eyes, the hegemon of the royal sacred region? Surround her and kill her without mercy. Capture that woman as well. Zai Xian commanded. Momentarily, the experts behind him all moved out, surrounding the entire inn in the blink of an eye. This matter must not be leaked out. Those who knew about it must be killed on the spot. The people in the inn all trembled as they felt a chill run down their spines. Zai Xian wanted to silence them. Beauty, I will let you enjoy the bliss of the mortal world. The evil-looking young man laughed when he saw this scene, staring at Lin Xian. The experts from the celestial maiden sect behind Lin Xian, stepped out. At the same time, the experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley, who were protecting Qin Wentian, also soared up into the air. Several puppets appeared, protecting Qin Wentian. Right now, Qin Wentian was a character the royal sacred sect wanted to kill. How could the Medicine Sovereign let his guard down? The moment he stepped out, there would be experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley bringing along their puppets to protect him. The commotion here immediately attracted the attention of the spectators from afar. There were also many experts in the air, including some from the immortal realms. The young man riding on the golden Jiao was there as well. His eyes were filled with coldness as he stared at the commotion below. This time around, the Eastern Sage Immortal Great Emperor opened up a path to the royal sacred region, causing many people from the immortal realms to descend. Other than some truly extraordinary characters, there were also quite a few scum. They came to this country bumpkin world for the sake of enjoying their women. He looked down on these people, but he couldn't be bothered with them. They were merely scum. Regardless of country bumpkin worlds or immortal realms, there were countless of them. Given how vast the immortal realms were, the true elites were still the minority, doing such filthy things in the open. Such despicable characters. Even if my royal sacred region is a country bumpkin world in your eyes, we still won't be able to tolerate them. Kill them all. Qin Wentian commanded. Numerous puppets shot out, aiming for the air. Chapter 7:10. Bastard. Zai Xian's countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. Qin Wentian actually brought so many puppets with him. These puppets were all at the peak tier of the 5th rank and required multiple peak tier celestial phenomenon ascendants to gang up against them. How could the people he brought with him contend against them? The golden dragon puppet lifted its sharp claws and slashed out in the air. A boundless spatial light screen enveloped this entire space, as though wanting to isolate this place from the outside world. The countenances of the extraterrestrial visitors all changed. Shweli roared in rage, "Country bumpkin, you dare to act against us? Kill him." Qin Wentian swept his gaze over, staring at Shweli. His eyes gleamed with a cold light, causing the hearts of those who saw it to tremble. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, a great rock puppet flapped its wings and slashed through the air. Shweli hurriedly evaded, but although his strength was tyrannical, how could he be compared to such a powerful puppet? The space he was in seemed to have been torn apart. Shweli's body was directly slashed into many pieces, dying an extremely miserable death. Those experts protecting him didn't even have time to flee. They basically had no way to resist, let alone save Shweli. "You dare to kill us?" One of Shweli's good friends turned pale as he frenziedly fled. However, that golden spatial light screen wasn't something that could be broken so easily. One of the Python Jiao puppets directly rushed over and bit him to death, showing no mercy. "Awesome!" the people in the inn shouted in excitement. Killing these extraterrestrial visitors was simply too arrogant. The Royal Sacred Sect helped the evildoers, actually helping those evil extraterrestrial visitors to abduct the beauties of the sacred royal city. How despicable! Now that Qin Wentian was willing to kill these extraterrestrial visitors, they were naturally happy for him. Rumble! With a deafening sound, the experts of the Royal Sacred Sect broke apart the space around Zaixian, bringing him along as they fled towards the horizon. That evil-looking young man also wanted to flee, but he couldn't even escape after a few attacks. "You still want to live?" Qin Wentian's voice rang out. That evil-looking young man turned his gaze over and stared at Qin Wentian, after which, a dazzling constellation flashed past, and the young man felt as though he was in another world. This was none other than Qin Wentian's Dreamworld constellation, bringing the evil-looking young man into this world. The Dreamworld constellation was a type of domain-type constellation. The expression of the evil-looking young man changed slightly. He glanced at this space before his eyes stared at Qin Wentian and said, "The cultivation art I cultivate is extremely marvelous. I have the ability to control women and enjoy the pleasures of the mortal world. Not only that, I can also raise my cultivation base. Do you want to cultivate it?" Qin Wentian lifted his hands as a gigantic palm imprint blasted out towards the evil-looking young man. The countenance of the evil-looking young man drastically changed. He pointed his finger in the air as a blood-colored beam of light shot out, slamming into the palm imprint. The palm imprint blasted out by Qin Wentian actually turned the color of blood as it shattered apart. This cultivation art can allow any beautiful woman to become your slave. For example, that beautiful woman beside you. As long as you use the cultivation art I cultivate to control her, she will satisfy all your requests. Are you sure your heart isn't moved? The evil-looking young man continued. At the same time, he released his constellation as beams of evil light cascaded downwards, bringing with them a marvelous aura as they shot towards Qin Wentian. "Evil-looking fellow, die." Qin Wentian icily spoke. At this moment, without the protection of Zaixian, the evil-looking young man had no one to rely on. His countenance instantly turned incredibly unsightly to behold as he coldly stated, "I'm a disciple of the Evil Desire sect. If you kill me, the Evil Desire sect will make things very miserable for you, turning your woman into a slave. You better think this through clearly. Are you trying to scare me? If the Evil Desire sect killed their way here because of you, you wouldn't have no guards by your side. You are suppressed everywhere in the immortal realms, yet you dare to come to my royal sacred region and behave atrociously? Die." Qin Wentian's countenance was as cold as ever. A gigantic golden claw slashed out, causing fear to appear on the face of that evil-looking young man. After which, sounds of piercing rang out as his head was directly smashed apart. He truly died without a burial ground. How decisive! The people in the surroundings stared at Qin Wentian as they gave the order to kill him, not leaving a single one alive. As expected of the most outstanding geniuses in the royal sacred region. Even if he was an outsider, he would still be killed without mercy. Lin Xian stood beside Qin Wentian with a smile on her face. Back then it could be said that she had misjudged him. She actually thought that the 8 era-suppressing geniuses were more outstanding compared to Qin Wentian. But from the looks of things now, Those 8 weren't qualified to be mentioned in the same breath as Qin Wentian. This man would become the symbol of an era. In this era, no one would be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him, becoming the legend of the royal sacred region. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at Zai Xian, who was in the air. Zai Xian was the sacred prince of the royal sacred sect. The royal sacred sect had put in a lot of effort to protect him, and the guards around him were all extremely powerful. Even the puppets couldn't take him down in a short period of time. Naturally, this was also because the royal sacred sect and the Medicine Sovereign Valley were currently at war. If it was before, who would dare to touch the people of the royal sacred sect? Zai Xian didn't need any guards at all. Zai Xian, you proclaim yourself to be someone from the immortal realms and call me a country bumpkin. With your cultivation base at the 3rd level of celestial phenomenon, do you dare to fight me? Qin Wentian stared at Zai Xian as he spoke. Zai Xian's eyes were as cold as ice, as sharp beams of light shot out, wanting to slice Qin Wentian into 1,000 pieces. You are only at the 1st level of celestial phenomenon. I don't wish to bully you, Zai Xian coldly replied. A mocking light flashed in Qin Wentian's eyes when he heard this. He stared at Zai Xian as he continued, how lamentable, you still dare to call me a country bumpkin. After speaking, Qin Wentian swept his gaze over the crowd as he continued, guests from the immortal realms, although the people of my royal sacred region are from a country bumpkin world in your eyes, we are all wuxiu pursuing the martial path. What difference is there between nobility and inferiority? I, Qin, hope that you all wouldn't willfully slaughter the innocent here in the royal sacred region. I, Qin, will thank you in advance. Your words aren't wrong. We are all wuxiu pursuing the martial path. Since this is the case, you should also understand that regardless of the immortal realms or the royal sacred region, there would always be scum who would bully the weak. These people have no way to represent the people of the immortal realms. An expert in the air spoke. The aura of the young man who spoke was extraordinary. Qin Wentian nodded his head. Sir's words are right. I also hope that the guests from the immortal realms would have the bearing of true experts from the immortal realms and not be like those scum. The person in the air nodded. At this moment, he inclined his head as a resplendent light flashed in his eyes. Qin Wentian also inclined his head and stared at the sky. His countenance abruptly turned solemn as his heart pounded violently. In the boundless sky, a destructive vortex appeared. At this instant, it was as though doomsday had arrived, causing the hearts of everyone to tremble violently. What's that? The crowd inclined their heads and stared at the sky as they furrowed their brows. The vortex in the sky blotted out the sun. This was truly blotting out the sun. It was as though the sky no longer existed. That vortex had replaced the sky. It wasn't just a certain location in the sky, but the entire sky. That terrifying vortex appeared. It was like doomsday had arrived. A supreme existence. A thought flashed in the hearts of Qin Wentian and the others. Most probably, only supreme existences in the legends would have such destructive power. Had the legendary Eastern Sage Great Emperor descended? Is this the Eastern Sage Great Emperor? He can even replace the sky. Someone mumbled in a low voice as his entire body trembled. Replace the sky? A person in the air lowered his head as he spoke. What sort of character is the Eastern Sage Great Emperor? Just a mere world, he can shatter it with a single slap. The sky of the Sumeru world is nothing in the eyes of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. It's merely a particle. As the sound of this voice faded, the hearts of many pounded as an intense desire to grow stronger appeared in their hearts. Stellar martial cultivators at the later stages of their cultivation, would they really be able to possess such world-shaking might? In their eyes, a world was merely a particle. They could shatter it with a single slap. If one could become the disciple of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, he would be able to interact with such a heaven-defying expert at such a close distance. Many mused. Now it seems that the rumor of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor accepting a disciple had already been confirmed. Not only were the people in the sacred royal city shocked, at this moment in the entire royal sacred region including Granshang, Granxia, and even Chu, countless people all stared at the same scene when they inclined their heads. That terrifying vortex occupied the entire sky. For those in the core regions of the royal sacred region, it was still fine if they knew about the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. But for those in the remote regions, Their hearts were all filled with panic. All of them stared dumbfoundedly, feeling that the apocalypse was about to arrive. The whirlpool of destruction in the sky gradually changed, and an incomparably splendid scene was faintly discernible. It gradually revealed itself to the world, like an incomparably magnificent celestial palace. Is this a place where immortals live? Everyone in the world inclined their heads and stared at the sky. The shock in their hearts had already reached the extreme. Even in their dreams, they didn't dare to imagine that such a scene would appear. It was simply too shocking. The blurry immortal palace in the sky gradually became clearer. In fact, it seemed to be a place where immortals held banquets for their guests. In a certain elegant manner within the immortal palace, a banquet had already been prepared. In the direction of the host there was already a statue sitting there. This statue seemed ordinary at first glance, but the more one looked at it, the more extraordinary it seemed. That statue sat there calmly, yet it seemed to possess a life of its own. It was just that it was in a deep slumber and could awaken at any moment. Is that the statue of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor? The people in the sacred royal city felt their hearts trembling. If that was the case, the Eastern Sage Great Emperor actually prepared a banquet? Could it be that the person he invited was also a supreme existence from the immortal realms? At this moment, in the sky above the immortal residence, a row of blurry shadows appeared. They were like tiny black dots that gradually grew larger and larger until they disappeared from the vision of many people. Only the people of the royal sacred region, the sacred royal city, could see them. That was a row of silhouettes descending from the immortal palace in the sky. The person standing in the center seemed to be very young. He had his hands clasped behind his back and his eyes were like sharp swords, sweeping his gaze over this world, exuding a disdainful aura. Who are they? Many in the sacred royal city clearly saw that the silhouettes were indeed humans. Their hearts pounded violently. They were actually descending from the immortal palace in the sky. Chapter 7:11. That group of silhouettes continued descending, gradually disappearing from the vision of many in the sacred royal city. When they were in the air, the number of people who could see them increased. But as they descended, the number of people who could see them gradually decreased. Qin Wentian couldn't see those people anymore. He only knew that they had descended in the sacred royal city, but he had no idea where exactly they were. Who are these people? Are they the guards of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor? Lin Xian, who was beside Qin Wentian, mumbled. No idea. Seems like the level we've interacted with is truly too low. The supreme existences of the immortal realms isn't something we can imagine. Qin Wentian felt shock in his heart. The impact of this scene was extremely intense. Lin Xian smiled, her beautiful eyes staring at Qin Wentian. Maybe one day you will also be able to reach such a level. When you return to the royal sacred region, you will be able to dominate the entire world. I'm afraid it will take a very long time. Qin Wentian faintly replied. How could becoming such a supreme existence be something that could be accomplished in a day? It would take countless years. But at the very least, you will have a chance to enter the tutelage of a supreme existence and become his disciple. Lin Xian smiled again. If the Eastern Sage Great Emperor only wanted people from the royal sacred region to participate, Qin Wentian would indeed have a very high chance. In this era, Lin Xian felt that there were no characters more dazzling than Qin Wentian. Unless those guests from outside the immortal realms competed against Qin Wentian. This is indeed a good opportunity. Qin Wentian nodded his head. Such a powerful existence, if he really wanted to accept him as a disciple, he would naturally be willing to put in some effort and strive to gain the favor of that supreme existence. It was true that the growth of one's martial path depended on oneself, but to become a disciple of a supreme existence, it didn't mean that he had to be under the protection of that supreme existence every day. He could still rely on his own strength to roam the world and improve himself. However, having a master of a supreme existence occasionally giving him pointers, directly pointing to the core of his martial path, wasn't this a good thing? From Qin Wentian's point of view, no matter if Wu Xiu was born in an aristocratic clan or not, he couldn't rely on others too much. If not under the protection of a supreme existence, he wouldn't be able to truly temper himself. If he didn't temper his state of mind, he might still be hunted down by others. Even if he became a disciple of a supreme existence, he wouldn't neglect his own tempering. At this moment, in a certain direction in the royal sacred region, the group of figures that descended from the celestial dome immortal palace landed at a place not too far away from Qin Wentian. Over there were already two silhouettes. One was an old man, and the other was a beauty as pure as a snow lotus. Her eyes were as cold as ever as she stared at the group of people descending from the sky. This one is Dongsheng Ting. Is Princess Qing'er doing well? Among the group of people descending from the sky, the sharp-looking young man standing in the center stared at Qing'er as he spoke. His voice was gentle and melodious, filled with magnetism. However, if one were to listen carefully, one would be able to sense a hint of arrogance in his voice. It wasn't something he intentionally revealed, it was like he was used to being aloof and proud. No matter when he spoke, there would always be a hint of arrogance in his voice. Qing'er's eyes were as cold as ever. She didn't reply and only glanced at the old man beside her. That old man smiled. Princess, Dongsheng Ting is the youngest son of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. His talent is outstanding and he's extremely famous in the immortal realms. He has cultivated for less than 100 years and has already broken through to the immortal foundation realm. 87 years. Dongsheng Ting replied. Such talent is extremely rare even in the entire immortal realms. The old man laughed. Oh, Qing'er faintly replied. She was as cold as ever as though she didn't hear the conversation between the two of them. Her countenance was as cold as ever. There wasn't even the slightest fluctuation in it. Dongsheng Ting's attention had always been on Qing'er. When he saw Qing'er's calm countenance, his heart couldn't help but to tremble. Seems like the youngest daughter of the Chongqing the Great was indeed as the rumors said. The Chongqing the Great managed to reverse the situation under unfavorable circumstances, seizing control of an immortal empire and ascending to the throne. One could say that he was the most famous character in the immortal realms recently. There were rumors saying that when he was vying for the throne, he only sent his youngest daughter, Qing'er, away to a particle world. It was simply too difficult to find a single person in the countless particle worlds. Even if he was defeated, his youngest daughter, Princess Qing'er, would be able to live peacefully in this world and wouldn't be implicated. Not only that, the process of the Chongqing the Great vying for the throne was extremely arduous. There were even two sons who died in the process. From this, one could see how cruel it was. The sons of the Chongqing the Great were all supreme characters with lofty statuses, but they all died in battle. Naturally, those who fought against the Chongqing the Great for the throne were all annihilated. Why did the Chongqing the Great only send his youngest daughter away when he was vying for the throne? Some people speculated that it was because the youngest daughter was too young and had yet to cultivate. Hence, it wasn't suitable for her to be on the battlefield. However, this guess was soon refuted. Because other than Princess Qing'er, the Chongqing the Great didn't send any of his wives or concubines away. His other sons and daughters who didn't have any combat prowess were also there. The only exception was Princess Qing'er. Hence, another rumor circulated around the immortal realms. The youngest daughter of the Chongqing the Great, Qing'er, had the physique of an immortal king and was born with an innate supreme ability. This news caused a huge commotion. This was especially so when the Chongqing the Great was preparing to bring back Princess Qing'er after he ascended to the throne. The gazes of many turned to the mysterious Princess Qing'er. The Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor and the Chongqing the Great were good friends. Hence, Dongsheng Ting was much clearer about Qing'er compared to others. Right now when he saw the aura of Qing'er, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Qing'er, father told me to come here to fetch you. The Chongqing the Great misses you very much, but I heard that you still have unfulfilled wishes. Father promised the Chongqing the Great that he would do his best. As long as the person Princess fancies meets the requirements of father, he would naturally accept that person as a disciple and guide him with all his heart. Even if that person doesn't meet the requirements, father also promised that he would get an expert he invited to the banquet to accept that person as a disciple. Princess, there's no need to be worried. Dongsheng Ting spoke to Qing'er. The old man beside Qing'er turned to Qing'er and explained, Princess, the Eastern Sage Great is an immortal emperor character in the immortal realms. He wouldn't casually accept a disciple. Right now, the disciples under him are all supreme characters whose names shook the immortal realms, and all of them have extraordinary talent. If the Eastern Sage Great's disciple can't meet the requirements, it would only bring disgrace to his reputation. Hence, it's already extremely rare for the Eastern Sage Great Emperor to be able to do this. Everything still has to depend on himself. If he can't meet the requirements, the Eastern Sage Great Emperor can still agree to let another expert accept him as a disciple and bring him to the immortal realms. Princess, there's no need for you to worry. For a supreme character like the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, an immortal emperor of a region, each and every disciple of his would receive the attention of the entire immortal realms. The words of the old man weren't false. If the Eastern Sage Great Emperor had a disciple who was useless, it would surely affect the reputation of the master. For supreme characters like the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, there's no need to worry about this. Oh, Qing'er nodded her head and didn't say anything more. This caused the old man to have a bitter smile on his face. This person in front of him was the son of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, yet the princess couldn't even be bothered to say anything. Princess has always been like this, the old man explained to Dong Shengting. Don't worry about it. Princess must have suffered many trials and tribulations in this world. It's only natural for her to be a woman of few words. Junior has long heard of Senior's name, and since we met today, I'd like to have a chance to discuss the martial Dao with Senior. Dong Shengting bowed slightly to the old man beside Qing'er, exuding an air of elegance. You're too polite. With the guidance of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, how would it be up to an old fellow like me to criticize you? The old man calmly spoke, neither servile nor overbearing. Although the person in front of him was the son of a good friend of the Chongqing the Great, as a general under the Chongqing the Great, he naturally couldn't bring disgrace to the name of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. With regards to Princess Qing'er, he had no choice but to show respect to Dong Shengting. Princess, it's time for us to leave, the old man said to Qing. A look of reluctance flashed in Qing'er's eyes, after which she spoke in a low voice. Before I leave, I wish to see him and bid farewell. It's only right. The old man heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Qing'er agreeing. Let's go. A group of people stepped out, soaring through the air. Qin Wentian still stood in the inn. However, at this moment, an intense spatial fluctuation could be felt from afar as a group of silhouettes appeared in the air. When Qin Wentian saw one of the silhouettes, he couldn't help but start as hundreds of emotions surged in his heart. Qin Wentian saw this group of silhouettes descending from the immortal palace in the sky. Qing'er was beside them. The medicine sovereign's conjecture was right. The emotions in Qin Wentian's heart were extremely complicated. So it turned out that this woman who was as cold as a snow lotus had never left his side before. In fact, she even invited an immortal emperor of an immortal realm to accept her as a disciple just to give him a sliver of a chance? The others were already in an uproar. These people were none other than the experts who descended from the immortal palace under the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. As for Lin Xian'er, she was stunned. She glanced at these people before shifting her gaze back to Qing'er, feeling an intense sense of shock in her heart. That woman who likes to follow beside Qin Wentian, what is her identity? Lin Xian'er's heart trembled. Qing'er actually took the initiative to walk towards Qin Wentian. Her cold eyes stared at Qin Wentian as she lowered her head and spoke in a low voice. I have to leave, I can no longer stay by your side. Upon hearing that melodious voice, Qin Wentian didn't know how to reply. He could only ask in a daze, can't you not leave? Qing'er inclined her head, her beautiful eyes staring at Qin Wentian as she shook her head, as though she couldn't bear to part with him. In the future you have to live well. Qing'er continued, her voice was as clear and melodious as ever. However, the calmness in her voice caused Qin Wentian to feel the urge to choke up. This woman who treasured her words like gold, why was she the one who told him to take care of himself before she left? You too, you have to live well. Qin Wentian squeezed out a smile as he stared at Qing'er. Chapter 7:12. The spectators all stared at Qing'er and Qin Wentian. Their relationship seemed to be very close, yet there seemed to be a distance between them. They also knew that Qin Wentian's wife was none other than the holy maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, Qing'er Qingchang. What made them even more shocked was that this maiden seemed to be acquainted with the group of people who descended from the skies. In that case, what was her identity exactly? There were also experts from the royal sacred sect who recognized Qing'er. This maiden was none other than the maiden who threatened them back then in the royal sacred sect. Staring at the cold gaze of that maiden, they suddenly recalled the words spoken by that pervert, causing their hearts to involuntarily tremble. Was that really a mere threat? This mysterious maiden, if she really wanted to raise the royal sacred sect to the ground, would she be unable to do so? As they thought of this, they felt their bodies turning cold. Their expressions were incomparably complicated as they stared at Qin Wentian. This supreme genius of the royal sacred region, what sort of charm did he have exactly? The maidens around him were all so outstanding. Qing'er from the Medicine Sovereign Valley, Lin Xian, from the Celestial Maiden sect. And now this Qing'er might even be someone from the mysterious immortal realms. Princess Qing'er, it's time for us to leave. At this moment, Dong Shangting's voice drifted over. Qing'er didn't turn her head. Her cold gaze was still fixed on Qin Wentian. After which, she spoke in a low voice, "I will be fine." And just as Qing'er was speaking, a gust of wind gusted by. Beside Qin Wentian, another breathtaking silhouette appeared, causing the eyes of many to freeze there. Staring at the three maidens that appeared beside Qin Wentian, not a single one of them could shift their gaze away. The gazes they used to stare at Qin Wentian were already filled with jealousy and envy. Even for a character like Dong Shangting, he was stunned by the existence of these three maidens. His deep eyes flickered as he stared deeply at Qin Wentian. As for Zai Xian, he was already numb. Qing'er, who was as cold as a snow lotus on a mountain of ice, was so transcendent. And Mo Qingcheng, who radiated a faint holy light, was like the embodiment of pure beauty. Lin Xian, who was as beautiful as a fairy, would cause any man to feel a desire to protect her. When these three women stood together, everything else in the world would be overshadowed. And these three women were all standing beside Qin Wentian. Lu Zian, who had been watching the commotion, had long since froze. When she came to this aboriginal world, she was extremely arrogant. But at this moment her arrogance was completely shattered. It wasn't because of her strength but because of her beauty. Her arrogance was completely shattered. If she stood beside any other woman, those men who loved to look good wouldn't even spare a glance at her. The three women were all here. If she walked over at this time, she would probably be treated as thin air. It would only serve as a foil to the otherworldly beauty of the three women. When Mo Qingcheng appeared, Qing'er glanced at her. No emotions could be seen in her cold eyes. Qin Wentian smiled at Mo Qingcheng. "You are here?" Mo Qingcheng held onto Qin Wentian's hand. That soft and gentle hand of hers seemed to give Qin Wentian strength. But from the perspective of others, it was as though she was declaring her sovereignty over Qing'er. She was Qin Wentian's wife. "I'm leaving." Qing'er spoke, bidding farewell to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian nodded as he tightened his grip on Mo Qingcheng's hand. After which, Qing'er turned and slowly flew up into the air. Her speed was very slow, so slow that people could feel her reluctance to leave. The old man, as well as Dong Shangting and the rest, stood guard beside Qing'er. This beautiful maiden who was referred to as princess, was most probably a princess from the immortal realms. Qin Wentian stared at the departing back of Qing'er as he drew in a deep breath. And at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out in his ears. "Qing'er treats you very well." That was Mo Qingcheng's voice. Her voice was very soft and gentle. When you are in the most dire straits, the one who appears by your side would always be her. She is like a female knight, silently protecting you. In fact, you have no idea how much she has sacrificed for you. Mo Qingcheng slowly spoke. Her voice was as ethereal as ever. Although it was very soft, Qin Wentian could hear it clearly. His body involuntarily trembled as he stared at Mo Qingcheng's flawless countenance. Even Lin Xian was deeply shocked. Her eyes were filled with disbelief as she stared at Mo Qingcheng. It was as though she couldn't imagine that Mo Qingcheng would actually say such words at this moment. Qin Wentian didn't expect it either. At this moment, Mo Qingcheng's gaze slowly turned over, similarly staring at Qin Wentian. A gentle smile could be seen on her face as she spoke. "Master told me some things. Wentian, the things that Qing'er has done for you are something that I would never be able to do. In the past when I wasn't by your side, it was also Qing'er who took care of you, always appearing when you needed her the most. The sunlight shone on Emo Chingching's flawless countenance. Her smile was so beautiful, so radiant. So, I don't wish for this to become your regret. Similarly, I also don't wish for Qing'er to leave with regrets. So, quickly chase after her. At the very least, tell her to wait for you. Emo Chingching's smile seemed a little silly in the eyes of Lin Xian'er. But that smile, that gentle voice, caused Qin Wentian's eyes to redden. He stretched out his trembling hands, holding Emo Chingching's face. In that radiant smile of hers, tears actually flowed out, yet she was still smiling. Why are you so silly? Qin Wentian gently stroked away the tears on Emo Chingching's face. At the very least, my love for you won't be so selfish. I can also be like Qing'er with no regrets. Emo Chingching was still smiling. I don't want you to have regrets, I don't want you to regret. I don't want my love to become a shackle to you. Please forgive me for being jealous. As a woman I can't avoid it. But I would rather be the one feeling jealous than to see you feeling the slightest hint of sadness. Quickly go, Qing'er is a good girl. She has done so much for you, you shouldn't leave just like that. Emo Chingching tightly held onto Qin Wentian's hand before releasing it. In her smiling eyes, the tears were even more beautiful than pearls. This scene was imprinted in Qin Wentian's mind, becoming an eternal memory. Qin Wentian abruptly took a step forward and embraced Emo Chingching tightly. He tightened his grip on Emo Chingching's hand before releasing it, after which he soared up into the air, soaring into the skies. Emo Chingching still had a smile on her face as she stared at the departing silhouette. She wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes. Those tears were the most beautiful, most selfless tears in the world. Qing'er. Qin Wentian called out to the silhouette in the air. Emo Chingching's body trembled slightly when she heard his voice, after which she stopped and turned, only to see Qin Wentian walking towards her. Very quickly, Qin Wentian appeared in front of Qing'er once again. Qing'er stared at Qin Wentian, her lips trembled, yet she didn't know what to say. Qing'er, can I hug you? Qin Wentian's eyes shone with a radiant smile, as though he wanted to melt away the coldness radiating from Qing'er. Qing'er's body trembled slightly. Her beautiful eyes involuntarily blinked as a hint of shyness could be seen on her face. She lightly nodded her head. As she fiddled with the corner of her robe, Qin Wentian smiled. He walked forward and stretched out both his hands, pulling Qing'er's soft body into his embrace. His hands exerted a lot of force, causing Qing'er's body to tremble slightly. However, she soon regained her composure. She didn't know what to do with her hands, but eventually, she placed them on Qin Wentian's shoulders. At this moment her heart was filled with warmth. Qin Wentian seemed to want to melt Qing'er with his embrace. After a long time, Qin Wentian loosened his grip on Qing'er's hands, but his hands were still placed on Qing'er's slender waist. Their eyes met, and they were so close to each other. At this moment, the iceberg-like woman's cheeks were flushed. She was so beautiful and charming. Suddenly, Qin Wentian's head moved forward, and his lips directly pressed on Qing'er's soft lips. He hugged her tightly again. Qing'er's head seemed to have been struck by lightning. She was stunned and blinked her beautiful eyes. At this moment, she could clearly feel Qin Wentian's reluctance and strong attachment. She slowly closed her eyes, allowing Qin Wentian to kiss her. Her long eyelashes were so beautiful, and in her tightly shut eyes, glistening with tears could be seen. The countenances of the old man behind her and Dong Shangting also changed. The old man had a helpless look in his eyes, while Dong Shangting's eyes flickered with coldness. However, he didn't have the authority to stop Qin Wentian. I'm leaving. In the depths of her emotions, Qing'er pushed Qin Wentian away. She directly turned and soared into the air, as though she didn't want Qin Wentian to see the reluctance in her eyes. She was worried that if she stayed here for even a moment longer, she wouldn't be able to bear to leave. Qing'er, wait for me. Qin Wentian's voice drifted over from behind. Qing'er didn't slow her steps at all. In fact, she even quickened her pace. I will definitely head to the immortal realms to look for you. Even if I have to traverse the 10,000 heavenly realms, even if I have to traverse the 9 heavenly layers, I will definitely find you. These clouds can't obstruct my eyes when I want to see you. This sky can't obstruct my path to find you. The emotions that Qin Wentian had been accumulating in his heart suddenly gushed out like a waterfall, unable to be contained any longer. Qing'er inclined her head, staring at the clouds, staring at the sky. Her face was already filled with tears. Chapter 7:13. Qin Wentian didn't continue chasing. The old man who was protecting Qing'er cast a deep glance at Qin Wentian before continuing on his way to Qing'er's side. Young people were always arrogant, not knowing the immensity of the 9 heavens and earth. Although Qin Wentian's grand words were easy to say, how could this path be so easy? The immortal realms were boundlessly vast. It was unknown how many territories it covered. There were countless geniuses in the immortal realms, but how many of them would be able to reach the pinnacle of the immortal realms? Even if one's talent was unrivaled when they were young, how could it be so easy to reach the pinnacle? Below immortals, all were mortals. Above immortals, every step was akin to ascending the heavens. Princess Qing'er had an unparalleled physique and was born with a supreme innate talent. If Qin Wentian wanted to marry Princess Qing'er, the difficulty wouldn't be ordinary. If he didn't grow to a certain extent, even if the two of them loved each other, they would never be fated to be together. Reality could shatter too many beautiful things, destroying too many fairy tales. Although the old man was infected by the infatuation of the princess, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart at how innocent Qing'er was. If the princess had experienced the war for the throne and grew up in the immortal realms instead of the royal sacred region, she wouldn't be so naive. Dong Shengting's countenance was extremely unsightly. He and the guards he brought along escorted Qing'er away as a cold light flickered in his eyes. When he first met Qing'er, although he didn't really like her, he naturally felt a sense of goodwill towards the daughter of the evergreen immortal emperor, who was rumored to have an extraordinary physique. Not only that, she also had such an extraordinary countenance. When Dong Shengting spoke to Qing'er, Qing'er didn't reply. However, Dong Shengting felt that this was Qing'er's nature. Hence he wasn't angry. On the contrary, it was very normal for the daughter of the Chongqing the Great to have such a personality. But was Princess Qing'er's nature really like this? Earlier, she actually accepted a hug, and even a kiss from a man from a country bumpkin world. She didn't resist and even had tears streaming down her face. Although this had nothing to do with Dong Shengting, after all, he had no relationship with Qing'er, their fathers were merely good friends. He didn't have the qualifications to interfere in Qing'er's matters. But even so, he still felt extremely unhappy in his heart. As to why he appeared in this particle world of the royal sacred region, it was an order from his royal father. At the start, he wasn't willing and only came after his royal father revealed Qing'er's identity and physique. If not, he couldn't be bothered to waste time. Why did his royal father want him to personally come and fetch Princess Qing'er? How could Dong Shengting not understand the meaning behind it? This was clearly a hint, but now that such a thing happened, one could very well imagine how Dong Shengting was feeling right now. As for Qin Wentian, he naturally wouldn't care about Dong Shengting's feelings. In fact, he didn't even know what Dong Shengting's identity was. As he gazed at the figure that was gradually disappearing into the distance, he felt a sense of loss in his heart. Even he didn't understand that his feelings towards Qing'er had unknowingly become so deep. During these 10+ years of time, that bit-by-bit accumulation had long since converged into a torrent, and it was only at that moment that it was completely vented. Qin Wentian's gaze was filled with resolution, filled with an incomparably resolute conviction. Very soon, he would be able to leave the royal sacred region. The immortal realms wouldn't be too far away. Mo Qingcheng stood below with a sweet smile on her face. It was as though a huge rock had been lifted from her heart. At this moment, she actually felt a sense of relaxation. As a woman, her intuition was extremely sharp. How could she not sense the feelings between Qin Wentian and Qing'er? Although Qin Wentian had never revealed his feelings because of his love for her, Mo Qingcheng had asked herself many times before, what should she do? Qin Wentian was a man who valued relationships and also had an intense sense of responsibility. He wasn't willing to let her down. Hence, if she rejected Qing'er, maybe Qin Wentian and Qing'er would never be able to be together forever. But if that was the case, it would become an eternal regret in Qin Wentian's heart. She was afraid of hurting Qin Wentian, and was also afraid of facing herself like that. Now that she finally made a choice, she felt an unprecedented sense of relaxation in her heart. Naturally, there was also a hint of sourness in her heart. That was the nature of women, she had no way to control it. Everything seemed to have come to an end. Abruptly, the countenances of everyone froze. Those around Qin Wentian suddenly discovered that their attention was completely attracted by Qin Wentian and the others, to the extent that they forgot about the heavenly palace in the air. Because Dong Shengting and the others descended from the sky, and also because Qin Wentian and the others were simply too dazzling. At this moment, they inclined their heads and abruptly saw a row of silhouettes appearing in the heavenly palace. It was actually none other than Qing'er and the others. Initially, they couldn't see Qing'er and the others clearly because they were too far away. But when Qing'er and the others appeared in the heavenly palace, the scene became even clearer. It was as though the heavenly palace of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor could be projected to the entire world, and everything within could be seen clearly. In the royal palace of Grand Xia, numerous silhouettes stood in the airspace, staring at the sky. When Fairy Qingmei saw Qing'er, her body trembled violently. She had once thought that Qing'er might have an extraordinary background, but when she saw this scene, the impact in her heart was as intense as ever. Qing'er? Did she come from the outside world? Fairy Qingmei mused in a low voice. In Chu, there were also those who saw Qing'er beside Qin Wentian before. When they saw Qing'er, their hearts involuntarily trembled. To think that one could actually enter the heavenly palace in the sky. Not only that, Qing'er actually appeared there. At this moment, Dong Shengting stood in a dazzling location in the heavenly palace. It was as though he was standing on a war drum. His gaze was fixed on the people below, and the coldness in his eyes allowed everyone in the royal sacred region to see his countenance clearly. Who is this person? The people of the royal sacred region mused silently. My father, the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor, will be selecting a personal disciple in this particle world of the royal sacred region. The age limit is to be below 100 years of age, and there's no limit to the cultivation base. The selection will be held 7 days later in the heavenly palace. Dong Shengting slowly spoke, standing on the immortal palace that was immensely far away. That cold, arrogant voice of his reverberated throughout the entire royal sacred region, causing the heavens to tremble. This man was none other than the son of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. The rumors were indeed true. The Eastern Sage Great Emperor was going to recruit a personal disciple, and it was a personal disciple. Such an opportunity, once one grabbed hold of it, they would soar up into the heavens with a single leap. From then on, they would have an extraordinary status in the immortal realms. Those who were born and bred in the royal sacred region might not understand what this meant, but those who came from the immortal realms were very clear. At this moment, all the experts who came here from the immortal realms, including those below 100 years of age, all had sharp gleams of light in their eyes. Within 100 years of age, it was the best age for one to cultivate. 100 years of age was also a dividing line. The dividing line between the supreme geniuses of the immortal realms and the so-called geniuses. For experts who reached 100 years of age, if they could become immortals, their future prospects would be limitless, and they would have the potential to become supreme existences. Such characters were all outstanding characters in the immortal realms, and many wanted to snatch them away. There would be many powerful existences willing to accept them as disciples, and even if they couldn't enter the tutelage of an existence like the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, it wouldn't be too difficult for them to enter the tutelage of some other supreme existences in the immortal realms. Hence, although there was a restriction on the age, it was also a restriction on one's cultivation base. For those who could become immortals within 100 years of age, they wouldn't come here to compete with a bunch of country bumpkins for the chance to become the personal disciple of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. People like them had long attracted the attention of all directions, and if they wanted to take on a master, some supreme existences might even give them a chance to meet. This man claims to be the son of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. He should be the youngest son of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, Dong Shengting, a supreme genius of the immortal realms who became immortals within 100 years of age. He's extremely dazzling. An expert from the immortal realms mused as he stared at the silhouette in the air. Who would have thought that this time around, the Eastern Sage Great Emperor would really recruit a disciple from a country bumpkin world? Even if they didn't get selected, it was still a form of tempering for them. This time around, they even personally witnessed Dong Shengting's glory. Such a character was extremely rare in the immortal realms. 7 days later, a connection tunnel will appear. For those who wish to compete, You can choose to enter the immortal palace. But if you enter the immortal palace, your life and death will be determined by fate. Think carefully before you act. After speaking, Dong Shengting turned and departed, vanishing from sight. Qin Wentian stared at the departing silhouette of Qing as he silently sighed. This opportunity was something Qing fought for him. No matter what, he would do his best. That young man was the son of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. Yet he personally came to fetch Qing. What status did Qing have? Slowly walking to the side of Mo Qingcheng, Qin Wentian held her hands tightly. Staring at her smile, he couldn't say a single word. Even if there were thousands and thousands of words, it was still insufficient to express the feelings in his heart. Let's go, Dumbo. Mo Qingcheng gently smiled. Qin Wentian heavily nodded his head, pulling Mo Qingcheng along as they departed. At the same time, he spoke to Lin Xian'er. Xian'er, let's walk together for a while. Lin Xian'er nodded her head. She knew that Qin Wentian was doing this to prevent her from encountering any trouble. After all, Qin Wentian had slaughtered so many people here earlier. For the next 7 days, the entire world was in a state of shock. Everyone was discussing the matter regarding the immortal palace. Even the royal sacred sect temporarily placed their grudge with Qin Wentian aside. And in one of the 33 immortal realms, in a vast and powerful immortal empire, the princess of the empire returned. The Chongqing the Great personally led the members of the royal clan to welcome her and confer her the title of Evergreen Princess. His Majesty had the title of Chongqing the Great, conferring the princess the title of Evergreen Princess. Just from this title alone, one could tell how much the Chongqing the Great doted on this mysterious princess. This matter even caused a commotion in the immortal realms. After that, there was another rumor that the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor wanted to recruit disciples from a country bumpkin world. It was rumored that this matter had something to do with the mysterious Evergreen Princess. The Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor even invited some people to spectate this grand disciple recruitment ceremony, allowing them to witness it. If there were people who fancied someone, they could accept that person as their personal disciple as well. Naturally, for those at the same level as the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, the vast majority of them had no interest at all. Many of those who went had lower statuses compared to the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, but they were still extremely powerful existences. If someone in the royal sacred region was fancied by the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, it would also be considered a great fortune. Chapter 7:14. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. The experts of the royal sacred region were already rubbing their palms in glee. Although they knew the chances were slim, there were still many who wanted to give it a try. Those who had the qualifications to participate in the banquet were all extraordinary characters. If they had a chance to be accepted as a disciple by an expert from the immortal realms, their path of cultivation would be much smoother. And to the people of the royal sacred region, this was a rare opportunity to ascend to the heavens in a single step. With supreme experts from the immortal realms, why would they need to care about the face of the royal sacred sect? The royal sacred sect claimed to be the hegemon of this world, yet Zai Xian actually dared to do such a shady business. This was simply a humiliation to their name. Even for the people of the royal sacred sect, they were all filled with anticipation. The supreme experts of the immortal realms were characters that even the sacred emperor had to look up to. Once they acknowledged them as their master, even the sacred emperor had to be polite to them. How glorious was this? In any case, the people of the royal sacred region were all waiting to be brought into the immortal palace in the air. As for those who were over 100 years old, they could only sigh in their hearts. They didn't even have the qualifications to be brought in. Someone has arrived at the banquet. At this moment, the people of the world stared at the floating immortal palace in the air. Several experts appeared before the statue of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. All of them exuded an air of immortality and exuded an extraordinary aura. However, when they arrived before the statue, all of them bowed slightly to show their respect. This statue was none other than the statue of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, containing his immortal sense. After paying their respects to the statue of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, these experts all sat down and chatted merrily. The people of the royal sacred region couldn't help but sigh in admiration at the capabilities of supreme existences. Was this really just a particle world? The Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor was actually able to make the Immortal Palace float in the air, allowing everyone in this world to see everything clearly. It was like looking at the sun and moon. To supreme existences, a world was merely a spatial dimension. Could they destroy a single particle with a wave of their hands? How strong were these supreme existences of the immortal realms? The experts of the immortal realms chatted merrily, but the people of the royal sacred region couldn't hear them. They had no idea what they were talking about. The scene the experts of the royal sacred region saw was indeed the truth. In that immortal palace in the sky, there was indeed a banquet being held. There were many powerful characters who came to participate, and someone from the Eastern Sage Immortal Palace sent out a message saying that they naturally had to support the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. The Dongsheng Heaven Emperor was a supreme character of a region, a supreme expert of a certain region in the immortal realms. The people of this region would all give face to the Eastern Sage Emperor. In fact, there were also many experts from other regions who came over, wanting to see what the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor wanted exactly. As for the person who welcomed them, it was none other than the youngest son of the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor, Dongsheng Ting. Dongsheng Ting, what is His Majesty thinking exactly? Why does he want to recruit disciples in a single region? An old man with a long beard smiled as he stared at Dongsheng Ting. Momentarily, the gazes of many turned over. Although they had heard some rumors, they couldn't be sure if it was true or false. Also, they had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. After all, this matter implicated two supreme characters of the Eastern Sage Immortal Palace. Who would dare to question them? It was only because Dongsheng Ting was here that they decided to probe further. How would I know what Father is thinking? Maybe Father thinks that if people from the lower world want to mature, they would have to experience more trials and tribulations. If there's a talent that can be nurtured, they would have a better future. Dongsheng Ting smiled. He didn't speak the truth. That old man stroked his beard as a hint of redness flashed on his face. A meaningful smile could be seen in his eyes as he nodded. It's possible that Your Majesty thinks this way. It's just that it's a little strange. Isn't the scope of His Majesty's disciple recruitment a little too small? Given His Majesty's status, he can directly project his image into the myriad of particle worlds and let them compete for 8 to 10 years, choosing the most outstanding one. Only then would His Majesty be able to show how extraordinary he is. Senior's words are logical. It's just that who can guess Father's thoughts? Maybe he is just doing this on a whim. How would he think so much? Dongsheng Ting laughed. That's true. How can we guess the thoughts of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor? That old man laughed. I wonder which little fellow would be so lucky as to be accepted as a disciple by the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. Although he said this, the light in his eyes gave off an unfathomable feeling. Those who could attend this banquet were all extraordinary characters. In the past, for existences like the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, if he wanted to accept a disciple, firstly, the disciple must be pleasing to the eye. Secondly, the talent of that disciple must be truly heaven-defying. There were also precedents of such experts accepting disciples in the external worlds of the immortal realms. Others could easily cover millions of particle worlds, forcing them to compete for tens of years. At the end of the selection process, it was unknown how cruel it was. Many people were tortured to the point of insanity. Only those who survived would have the qualifications to be valued. Would the Eastern Sage Great Emperor accept a disciple on a whim? Clearly, it was impossible. As for the true disciple of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, the Chongqing the Great, he was currently sitting in an area shrouded in immortal qi. Before him, the shadow of an immortal palace could be seen, and it was actually a projection of the situation inside the immortal palace of the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor. Since the Eastern Sage Great has promised me, he naturally wouldn't go back on his words. As long as the little fellow you speak of truly has extraordinary talent, the Eastern Sage Great will consider accepting him as a disciple. But if the Eastern Sage Great doesn't like him, he will get those who attended the banquet to accept him as a disciple. These people are all extraordinary characters in the immortal realms, or how would they be qualified to attend the banquet arranged by the Eastern Sage Great? Chinger, since you are still worried, just stay here and watch. The Chongqing the Great had a slender figure, clad in a long white robe. His eyes were as boundless as the starry skies, immeasurably deep. Each of his actions exuded a unique elegance. At this moment, the Chongqing the Great had a gentle smile on his face, resembling a loving father. Where did the imposing aura of a conquering immortal empire and massacring the world go? Qing'er nodded her head lightly, her clear eyes staring ahead. What she saw was the same scene as the people of the royal sacred region. Other than the Chongqing the Great, there were many supreme characters in the immortal realms who used extraordinary methods to peer into the immortal palace in the sky above the royal sacred region. In fact, there were even some supreme characters who used their wills to sweep through the entire royal sacred region. Qin Wentian stood in the airspace above the Medicine Sovereign Valley. He could faintly sense the will of the supreme characters sweeping past him before disappearing in an instant. This caused him to sigh in his heart. If one thought that just because they broke through to the celestial phenomenon realm, they were already considered experts of an immortal realm. In front of the supreme characters of the immortal realms, they were simply too insignificant. If he offended a supreme character from the immortal realms, as long as the other party knew that he was in this world, they would be able to find him with just a strand of their will. This was simply too terrifying. Qin Wentian's path of cultivation had only just begun. He was now in contact with the world of the immortal realms. At this moment in the sky above the immortal palace, a resplendent beam of light cascaded downwards, resembling the rays of the sun. These beams of light were incomparably resplendent, transforming into incomparably resplendent diagrams that contained a powerful spatial energy. After that, these diagrams descended together with the resplendent beams of light. At this moment, countless beams of light appeared in the vast royal sacred region. Within each of these beams of light, resplendent golden diagrams could be seen. Divine inscriptions could be seen circulating within the diagrams, as a powerful spatial energy permeated the area. Welcome. Is this the welcome mentioned by Dong Shengting back then? The hearts of everyone in the royal sacred region trembled as their hearts pounded. Even for those with ordinary talent, they couldn't control the excitement in their hearts as they stepped into the light beams, standing on top of the resplendent golden diagram. Inclining their heads, they stared up into the air, only to discover that there was only a stretch of nothingness. In a certain location in the royal sacred region, a heavenly dipper sovereign couldn't control himself and stepped into the light beams. After which, the golden diagram flashed with a resplendent light as a buzzing sound rang out. His body vanished directly, but he didn't descend into the immortal palace. Instead, he was teleported to a high vantage point in the air, precisely the location he sensed earlier. After that, he began to descend downwards. Dong Shengting's silhouette once again walked up the battle drum. His gaze swept downwards as he spoke with cold arrogance. Use your perception to sense the situation within the immortal palace. Just like how you all condensed your astral souls, if you can't sense the immortal palace, you have no qualifications to enter it. His voice shook the entire royal sacred region, causing the hearts of countless people to shudder. If their perception wasn't strong enough, they wouldn't even have the qualifications to be guided over. Senior Medicine Sovereign Qingcheng, I'm going over. Qin Wentian turned his head as he spoke to the Medicine Sovereign and Mo Qingcheng beside him. Go on. The Medicine Sovereign smiled and nodded, hoping that Qin Wentian would have a chance to enter the tutelage of the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor. If that's the case, a power like the Royal Sacred Sect wouldn't even have the qualifications to see Qin Wentian. Even their sacred emperor would have to respectfully pay his respects when he saw Qin Wentian. How would they dare to issue the sacred royal decree to kill Qin Wentian in the royal sacred region? Qin Wentian slowly walked out, moving towards one of the pillars of light. The instant he stepped into it, he felt an incomparably intense fluctuation of astral energy. The golden runes beneath his feet circulated rapidly as a fearsome spatial energy enveloped his body. Qin Wentian closed his eyes as his perception gushed up the pillar of light. He could faintly sense that this pillar of light was formed from millions upon millions of strands of light. Each strand of light contained astral energy, akin to the astral light cascading down from the 9 heavenly layers. At this instant, Qin Wentian's tyrannical perception completely manifested. In just an instant, his perception arrived at an immortal mountain. This immortal mountain was filled with mist and there were already many experts here. These were none other than the experts who were guided over by the immortal light. What a fast speed! Seems like there are many guests from the immortal realms in the royal sacred region. It's just that they are all hidden within the royal sacred region. Qin Wentian silently mused. He didn't use his perception to connect to the immortal mountain like how he did with the constellations. His perception could still continue upwards. It was as though there was a formless energy obstructing his perception. However, Qin Wentian didn't hesitate as he floated upwards, directly breaking through the restriction. In an instant, he arrived at an even higher immortal mountain. There were already people here as well, and this immortal mountain was even further away compared to the first one. Seems like the test had already begun from the moment of guidance. Chapter 7:15. Qin Wentian didn't stop at the second immortal mountain. His perception continued to rush upwards, but a formless pressure was obstructing it. At this moment, Qin Wentian's perception transformed into an illusory body, appearing in the middle of the mountain range and unceasingly soaring up into the air. In his surroundings, there were many other illusory bodies of his. They could actually sense each other's existence. Evidently, it wasn't only Qin Wentian who was rushing upwards. Those who stopped at the first immortal mountain peak were the weakest among them. Their starting point was probably much later than the others. Busy. The formless pressure was broken apart. Qin Wentian's illusory body rushed upwards once again. He saw the third immortal mountain standing there steadily. As long as he willed it, his perception could land on it and the golden spatial array below would instantly teleport him over. Bzzz bzzz bzzz. In the vast space around him, the illusory bodies of others rushed upwards. There were also experts whose true bodies had already landed on this immortal mountain. He wasn't the first to arrive. At the instant the guiding light landed on the royal sacred region, all those who were prepared had already started to rush upwards, including those external guests. They clearly knew what it meant for the Eastern Sage Great Emperor to accept a disciple, and they naturally treasured this opportunity even more. Even if they couldn't enter the Eastern Sage Great Emperor's tutelage, they still had to do their best to attract the attention of other experts. The fourth immortal mountain, the fifth, the sixth. Qin Wentian unceasingly rushed upwards. The immortal palace hovered in the sky above the immortal mountains and ancient peaks. The experts at the banquet could clearly see everything that was happening below. There were a total of 9 immortal mountains, each taller than the previous one, and further away than the previous one. What it tested was one's perception of astral energy. This was the foundation of stellar martial cultivators. Although it was rare for people in the royal sacred region to undergo such a test, in the immortal realms, perception was extremely important. This was the foundation of stellar martial cultivators. If one's foundation wasn't outstanding, how could they even cultivate? Not bad, someone actually managed to ascend to the 6th peak. With such perception, he should be able to ascend to the 6th level of the astral river of the 9 heavenly layers and stay there stably. Among the guests, an expert smiled and nodded. Not bad, there are still many people rushing upwards. There would definitely be people who could ascend to the 7th peak or even the 8th peak. For the disciple recruitment this time around, there are many powerful geniuses from our immortal realms who secretly went to that particle world. Maybe I can accept a disciple here. One of them was clad in armor. His entire body exuded a destructive aura that was as deep as the abyss. His smiling eyes were extremely terrifying. This person was none other than Deep Flame, one of the immortal kings under the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. His title was Flame King and his combat prowess was extremely terrifying. He had a fearsome army of immortals under him, and had once fought for the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, conquering a territory controlled by another supreme existence. King Yen, you actually want to accept disciples? Are you going to give them to the army under you to train? He looked like a young man in his 20s or 30s. His skin was fair and clean, and those who did not know him would think that he was a young fellow who had just entered the cultivation world. However, in reality, he had already cultivated for 8,000 years. For someone of his cultivation level, 8,000 years was considered very young. This man was named Bai Wuya. His talent was extremely high, and he was a character at the Immortal King realm. Because he had only cultivated for a short period of time, there was once an Immortal King expert who had cultivated for an even longer period of time who wanted to bully him and snatch one of his treasures. However, that Immortal King was insta-killed by Bai Wuya. causing him to gain fame. 1,000 years after he stepped into the immortal king realm, he once killed a descendant of an immortal emperor because he saw injustice on the streets. As a result, 13 immortal kings under the immortal emperor surrounded him and killed all of them. Although immortal kings were also divided into cultivation levels, the 13 immortal kings who ganged up on Bai Wuya back then weren't any weaker than him. Bai Wuya's combat prowess was extremely high, and in the end, another immortal emperor spoke up for him. Only then did the immortal emperors who wanted to kill him stop. Many people were fearful of Deep Flame, but Bai Wuya simply couldn't stand the arrogance of the descendant of an immortal emperor. Hence, he killed the descendant of an immortal emperor. How would he feel any fear towards Deep Flame? Since His Majesty is accepting a disciple, this seat naturally has to support him. Bai Wuya, why don't you and I each choose a person and accept them as disciples? Let's see whose disciple has a brighter future. Deep Flame seemed to have the intention to oppose Bai Wuya. He coldly started to radiate an extremely terrifying aura. Characters at the Immortal King realm already had the qualifications to be called supreme existences. But to the experts of the immortal realms, only those at the lower cultivation level would refer to immortal kings as supreme existences. They themselves wouldn't dare to call themselves supreme existences. After all, immortal emperors were the true rulers of the immortal realms. Naturally, immortal kings and immortal emperors were also in the same realm. It's just that they were slightly different in terms of cultivation level. But for immortal emperors, every step they took was equivalent to an immortal. Wanting to cross a small realm was even harder than ascending the heavens. For example, those with immortal king physiques or supreme existences were fated to reach the immortal king realm. To countless people, this realm was unfathomably far away, but for them it was only a matter of time. The immortal king realm was their starting point, and not their destination. From this, one could very well imagine how terrifying they were. I have no interest in accepting disciples. But it's fine if we compare our judgment. Bai Wuya faintly spoke, his words causing the people beside him to laugh. Fine, since we are here to support His Majesty, we mustn't be too bored. It's fine to have some fun. Look, there are already people who managed to ascend to the 7th peak so quickly. Not bad. Being able to ascend to the 7th peak means that their perception can already reach the pinnacle of the 6th heavenly layer. His Majesty truly attracted many geniuses to appear in this particle world. The 8th peak, there are indeed more powerful people. Since their true bodies can ascend to the 8th peak, it means that their perception has already reached there. Such a level of perception can already reach the 7th heavenly layer. What's so strange about that? The majority of these people should be at the celestial phenomenon realm, and there are even some who are at the upper 3rd level of celestial phenomenon. Such people should at least be at the pinnacle of the 6th heavenly layer. Since His Majesty is accepting disciples, it's only normal for their perception to reach the 7th heavenly layer. Deep Flame's eyes were immeasurably deep as he emotionlessly spoke, filled with respect towards the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. Many people had smiles on their faces, yet they didn't feel that it was difficult. Celestial phenomenon ascendants who could ascend to the 7th heavenly layer were extremely rare, even in the immortal realms. Many people condensed astral souls from the 6th heavenly layer when they broke through to celestial phenomenon. Although their perception would grow stronger as they advanced to the celestial phenomenon realm, it wasn't so easy to break through to the 7th heavenly layer. Although the Eastern Sage Great Emperor could summon many such geniuses, there wouldn't be too many of them. As for the 9th peak, it required one's perception to be at the 7th heavenly layer, roaming freely about. Nobody knew if there would be such a person in the world. At this moment, Qin Wentian's perception also reached the 8th peak. The higher he ascended, the lesser the number of people on the peak. The number of illusory perception bodies also decreased, and at this moment there were only a few of them left. An intense pressure bore down on his perception, wanting to shatter it. There's already a person who appeared on this peak, and there are quite a few others who arrived here at the same time as me. This means that they are all able to land on this peak. I have to continue ascending, only then would I be even more extraordinary. Qin Wentian didn't give up, he continued ascending. This opportunity was fought for by Qing for him. He hoped that he would be able to grab hold of it. At the same time, there was another important reason why he wished to enter the tutelage of a supreme existence. This way the distance between him and Qing wouldn't be too far away. After all, Qing was a princess of the immortal realms. Qin Wentian was ascending, and so were the others. In addition, more and more perception bodies rushed up. Some of them knew that they had reached their limits and were afraid that their perception would collapse, hence, they sent their true bodies up. After a few hours, there were already 5 people who appeared on the 8th peak, causing many in the banquet to sigh in admiration. This was the rallying power of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. Only a few hours had passed and there would still be more people appearing on the 8th peak. And at this moment on the highest and furthest peak a figure appeared standing there. This person exuded astral energy fluctuations as his black eyes gleamed with a bright light. His aura was ice cold as he stared at the 8 peaks below. There wasn't a hint of complacency in his eyes, as though everything was within his expectations. He should be the one who ascended to the highest peak. There's actually someone who arrived on the 9th peak. The eyes of the immortal cultivators at the banquet gleamed with sharpness as they stared at the figure on the 9th peak. This young man isn't bad. His cultivation base reached the 8th level of celestial phenomenon within 100 years of age, and he also has such perception. Although we're not sure about his 5th astral soul, his next astral soul is already destined to be a violet gold astral soul. His potential isn't bad, and the success rate of him breaking through to the immortal realm is extremely high. Deep Flame stared at that person as a bright light flashed in his eyes. The first to ascend to the 9th peak indicated that his perception was the strongest. There are a few more people on the 8th peak. Someone spoke. Only then would things be interesting. It would be best if he could attract His Majesty to appear. The people of the royal sacred region could all see the scene in the immortal palace. They could also see the 9th peak, including those who stood on it. These people were truly dazzling, especially that existence at the very top. He was high up in the air, exuding a sense of supremacy. It was as though he was the most dazzling existence in the world. Bzzz. And at this moment, Qin Wentian, who had been rushing forward all this while, finally stepped past that slash. He could sense the existence of the 9th peak as the pressure grew even stronger. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Seems like he was about to reach his limit. It was impossible for him to continue ascending. His perception landed on the immortal mountains. Instantly, at the location where his true body was at, resplendent golden runes flashed as he directly vanished from the royal sacred region. In the next instant, his body appeared on the 9th immortal mountain. An intense fluctuation of astral energy could be felt from him. It was like the spatial energy that had yet to dissipate. Chapter 7:16. Qin Wentian stood on the mountain peak as he stared ahead. Below him, there were 8 other immortal mountains that were shrouded in mist. There were experts on each of the mountains, and right now, the 9th immortal mountain he was on was actually the highest peak. A sharp gaze landed on him. Qin Wentian turned his gaze over, only to see a cold and handsome figure beside him. That person's deep black eyes seemed to contain sharp swords within. For those who ascended the 9 mountains, they were all here for the sake of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor's disciple selection. This person was originally the most dazzling, unique, and unmatched. But Qin Wentian's appearance had shattered the uniqueness of that person. In addition, the aura exuding from Qin Wentian was much weaker compared to him. Clearly, Qin Wentian's cultivation base was much lower compared to him. However, his perception wasn't any weaker compared to him. In the royal sacred region, countless people inclined their heads and stared at the 9 immortal mountains below. They stared at the young man who stood at the highest peak. His white robes fluttered in the wind, exuding an incomparably handsome aura. Even when competing against experts from the immortal realms, he didn't seem to be at a disadvantage at all. The top ranker of the immortal martial realm grew more and more dazzling. Nobody could obstruct his radiance. As for the people of Grand Xia, no matter if it was Fairy Qingmei in the royal palace, or those former transcendent powers, all of them were in a daze as they stared up in the air. Qin Wentian would definitely walk higher and higher on his path of cultivation. Just like now, they could only look up to him in admiration. Until one day, he reached a height they couldn't even dream of. The people of Chu felt their hearts trembling. The young man who walked out from Chu was actually flying up into the sky. This was the grand disciple recruitment ceremony of a supreme existence from the immortal realms. At this moment, over 100,000 people had already appeared on the 9 mountains. The first mountain had the most people, and the higher one went, the fewer people there were. There were only 2 people on the 9th mountain, hence it was extremely dazzling. Even for the 8th mountain there were already several tens of people. How many people from the immortal realms have entered the royal sacred region exactly? Qin Wentian silently mused. A single world was simply too vast. Even if it was just an ancient country, there would be billions of lives in it. In the royal sacred region, the population wouldn't be less than 10 billion. Even if there were millions of people from the immortal realms, they wouldn't be conspicuous if they were scattered among the crowd. Scum like the evil-looking young man whom Qin Wentian killed were only the minority. Most of the people from the immortal realms wanted to grab hold of this opportunity and waited silently. Only now did they all walk out, stepping into the immortal light. Zaixian arrived at the 7th peak. He inclined his head and stared at the misty immortal mountain up ahead. He didn't see any familiar faces on the 8th peak as a cold smile appeared on his face. After which, he continued his gaze upwards, and when he saw Qin Wentian, his eyes flickered with a cold light as killing intent flashed within. This time around, the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor wanted to use this opportunity to recruit disciples. The Royal Sacred Sect wanted to eliminate Qin Wentian, who didn't have the protection of the Medicine Sovereign Valley. The 9th Immortal Mountain Peak. Lu Zian also arrived at the 7th mountain peak. There were already several hundred people here, and she couldn't help but sigh in her heart when she saw the 2 silhouettes at the peak. That genius from a country bumpkin world was gradually revealing his brilliance. Lu Zian had always been extraordinary, but in the first round of the welcoming test, she was already so ordinary. 2 hours later, a third person arrived at the 9th mountain peak. This was a young man with a resolute gaze. He looked very ordinary and didn't exude any powerful fluctuations of aura. However, he gave off an indescribable sense of danger. This was especially so for his eyes. At first glance they seemed ordinary, but at second glance they seemed to be extremely sharp. And if one looked more closely, they would be able to sense an extremely powerful ruthlessness in his eyes, as though there was an extremely deep obsession within. Haha, not bad. 3 people actually appeared on the 9th mountain peak. Interesting. At the banquet in the Immortal Palace, the experts from the immortal realms all had expressions of interest on their faces. Although the news of the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor accepting disciples didn't spread widely in the immortal realms, there were still many geniuses who came here after receiving the news. This was especially so for the immortal realms governed by the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. There's actually a total of 39 people on the 8th mountain peak. I didn't expect this. The eyes of these experts shone brightly. They were mainly staring at the 9th and 8th mountain peaks. Only those from these 2 mountain peaks had the qualifications to enter the 7th heavenly layer. Although the vast majority of them had a cultivation base at the 4th level of celestial phenomenon or above, it was already considered not bad. Although their 5th astral soul wasn't a violet gold astral soul, it was already destined that they would have a 6th astral soul. As for those below, the number of gazes that were focused on them was much lesser. Since they were accepting disciples, they naturally had to accept those who were outstanding in all aspects. With people from the 8th and 9th mountain peaks present, unless the performance of the people below was extremely outstanding, it would be very hard for them to attract any attention. 2 more hours, the path of guidance shall be sealed. At this moment Dongsheng Ting, who was standing on the gigantic drum, spoke, his voice echoing throughout the entire royal sacred region. Next, time slowly flowed by. The number of people on the immortal mountains grew lesser and lesser. After all, those who could reach the 9th mountain peak had already arrived. 2 hours passed, there were still 3 people on the 9th mountain peak while there were already 45 people on the 8th mountain peak. 10 breaths of time left. Dongsheng Ting spoke. 9 breaths, 8, 3, 2, 1. Time's up. As the sound of Dongsheng Ting's voice faded, a bright light flashed on the 9th mountain peak. As the guiding light vanished, a 4th silhouette appeared, stepping on the last breath of time. This fellow's luck is truly good. He managed to make it at the very last moment. A female immortal king laughed. You are wrong. It's not that his luck is good, it's because he is confident. Deep Flame stared at the young man who was the last to ascend the 9th mountain peak. His eyes were immeasurably deep. That young man's aura was calm as he stood there quietly, with no signs of panic at all. Was he just lucky? Risking his life just to make it at the very last moment? If he struggled desperately to ascend the 9th mountain peak, his aura would definitely fluctuate. However, the calmness of this young man made it clear that he was extremely relaxed. Oh, that female immortal king had a smile on her face. At this moment she could also see some clues. Young Master Tianyi of the Scarce Moon Immortal Manor is extremely famous. This K. Tianyi's cultivation base is at the 4th level of celestial phenomenon, and what's even rarer is that his 5th astral soul is an astral soul condensed from the 7th heavenly layer. This means that when he first broke through to celestial phenomenon, he could already ascend the 8th mountain peak. It shouldn't be too difficult for him to ascend the 9th mountain peak. In the immortal realms, there are many immortal kings who are willing to accept him as a disciple. It's just that the Scarce Moon Immortal King has always been guiding K. Tianyi personally. Now, it seems that he wants K. Tianyi to enter the tutelage of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. Deep Flame's gaze slowly turned over, landing onto an old man in white robes. He laughed, "Scarce Moon Immortal King. You are truly good at grabbing hold of opportunities. You actually allowed K. Tianyi to descend to this particle world to fight for this opportunity. Scarce Moon Immortal King. You are truly a crafty old fox." The gazes of many turned to the Scarce Moon Immortal King. This old fellow also had a complacent expression on his face. K. Tianyi had a violet gold astral soul. His perception was extraordinary, and his talent was outstanding as well. If he could enter the tutelage of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, he would be able to inherit his legacy, and there would be a possibility that 2 immortal kings would appear in the Scarce Moon Immortal Manor. I'm more optimistic about K. Tianyi. If he can really enter the tutelage of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor, there's a high possibility that he would be able to break through to the Immortal King realm in the future. Deep Flame spoke. It's still too early. His current cultivation base is still too low. It's hard to say what will happen in the future. Let's hope that he would be able to gain the appreciation of His Majesty. The Scarce Moon Immortal King was clearly more low profile, but it was too early for him to boast. After all, there were simply too many geniuses in the immortal realms. Although K. Tianyi's talent was very good, if he wanted to become a supreme existence, he would have to overcome too many hurdles. Other than K. Tianyi, the second person I'm optimistic about is the first person who ascended the 9th mountain peak. From him, I can sense a similarity between us. Deep Flame continued. Secondly, there's the third person who ascended the 9th mountain peak. He exudes a sense of ruthlessness and is extremely stubborn. Why doesn't Deep Flame think highly of the second person? He is the youngest and his perception is the strongest as well. His cultivation base is only at the 1st level of celestial phenomenon, and logically speaking, he should be the one ranked second. The female immortal king had a gentle smile on her face as she slowly spoke. He is too young. From his youthful eyes, I can actually see an arrogant self-confidence. His talent can be ranked second out of the 4, even comparable to K. Tianyi. However, it's very possible that he lacks tempering and tempering. He wouldn't be able to walk far on our path. Deep Flame spoke with a tone that could sever metal and sever iron. Indeed, I can see an intense conviction in his eyes. But it's only natural for a young genius to be arrogant. Deep Flame, your view is a little biased. The only female immortal king retorted. Let's see then. Deep Flame laughed uproariously. After which, he stared at Bai Wuya and asked, Bai Wuya, what do you think? If you don't even have confidence in yourself, how can you make others believe you? Speaking frankly with assurance and composure, aren't you the same as being arrogant? Bai Wuya mocked. If I were His Majesty, I would definitely accept this young man as my disciple. His potential is the greatest, surpassing K. Tianyi. Both of you are right. Everyone laughed. As to why Deep Flame didn't think highly of Qin Wentian, wasn't it because the gaze in Qin Wentian's eyes was somewhat similar to Bai Wuya's? That kind of arrogance and self-confidence gave people a misconception that they didn't know how high the heavens were. Only to see that at this moment Dong Shengting walked over. He stared at an immortal king as he smiled. My royal father instructed me that if any of the seniors came, I should get them to help him test them. Next, I hope to ask the Myriad Incarnations Immortal King for help. The Myriad Incarnations Immortal King was none other than the only female immortal king at the banquet. Although she was a female, her combat prowess was extremely powerful. Ordinary immortal kings weren't her match at all. Her ability to transform into a myriad of forms caused countless people to tremble in fear. The female immortal king smiled at Dong Shangting. It's my honor to be able to help the Eastern Sage Great Emperor. Senior's cultivation base is extraordinary. It's extremely suitable for you to test them. This time around, let's directly select 100 participants to observe. Dong Shangting spoke. No problem. The female immortal king smiled and nodded. After which, she closed her eyes as a strand of immortal sense gushed forth from the center of her brows. In the next instant, a beautiful silhouette appeared on the 9 mountain peaks. This was none other than the immortal sense of the female immortal king. Next, I will test all of you. The 100 participants who persist the longest can stay behind. The female immortal king slowly spoke. In the next instant, a terrifying strand of immortal sense enveloped the entire 9 immortal mountain. Everyone who was staring at the myriad incarnations immortal king was instantly drawn into her world. Chapter 717. The myriad incarnations immortal king was an immortal king-ranked character. Even if it was just a strand of her immortal sense, it was already so powerful that it could instantly transform into a myriad of forms, directly enveloping everyone on the 9 mountains. At this moment, all the experts on the 9 mountains felt that there was no one around them. They were still standing on the immortal mountain, but they were not there. They stood there alone. The entire space was filled with loneliness. Qin Wentian stood alone on the mountain. The surroundings were completely empty. He inclined his head and stared at the boundless skies. There was no sound at all. Illusionary arts? Qin Wentian mumbled. At the level of the myriad incarnations immortal king, how strong would her illusionary arts be? Qin Wentian was only at the celestial phenomenon realm, yet he was already able to cause others to be unable to differentiate between reality and illusion. When he used his dreamworld constellation, everything that happened within the dreamworld constellation was real. In that case, he had to treat everything seriously. That young woman was a supreme existence at the banquet. It was unknown how powerful she was. If you want to back out, just tell me directly. I will send you out. A melodious voice abruptly rang out, causing Qin Wentian's expression to stiffen. The space around him abruptly changed, transforming into a world of purgatory. Scorching lava burned frenziedly, and beneath Qin Wentian's feet, sounds of gushing lava could be heard. Qin Wentian only felt an intense pain from his feet, as though his entire body was about to be ignited. With a flash, Qin Wentian soared up into the air. He inclined his head and stared at the skies above, only to see a sea of purgatory flames. The boiling lava was so hot that it could even burn people to death. Qin Wentian's countenance sank. He was trapped in a pool of lava, and the heat waves unceasingly gushed into his body, causing him to instantly perspire. However, they were soon evaporated, and the feeling of being stuck to his body was extremely uncomfortable. His skin felt parched as though it was about to crack. His mouth felt parched and his tongue felt parched. Although it was unbearable, Qin Wentian was still able to endure it. He lowered his head, staring down warily at the lava below. Sizzling sounds rang out, and from the depths of the lava, a dangerous aura permeated the air. Then one of the places started to boil, and a huge head appeared from within. It was incomparably sinister. Walala! A fire-type ferocious beast appeared. Its fangs were extremely sharp, and its claws were covered with long spikes. Lava flowed unceasingly from its mouth, giving it an extremely terrifying appearance. It was extremely ugly, as though it was a ferocious beast that came from hell. That ferocious beast had a malevolent expression on its face. After which, it abruptly broke through the lava and lunged towards Qin Wentian with a speed as fast as lightning. The sharp claws of the ferocious beast were filled with boundless might, and the explosive power caused the entire space to tremble. Qin Wentian lifted his palms and blasted out. An illusory palm imprint slammed downwards, directly colliding with the sharp claws. Bang! An incomparably powerful force directly tore apart the illusory palm imprint, and in the blink of an eye, it appeared before Qin Wentian. This level of strength is definitely at the peak of the first level of celestial phenomenon, Qin Wentian silently mused. His silhouette explosively retreated as a beam of cold light shot out from his eyes. The terrifying will of his will gushed into the eyes of his opponent, bringing with it the power of dreams. However, he discovered that the eyes of his opponent didn't change at all. This ferocious beast was completely illusory. It could ignore the will of dreams and will of dreams. Boom! The incomparably huge claws slammed down. Qin Wentian lifted his palms to defend, only to feel a tearing pain. This caused Qin Wentian to clearly understand that this ferocious beast had the ability to kill for real. Die! Qin Wentian coldly spat out. A terrifying sword might erupted forth from his fist, lacerating everything. With a swishing sound, a terrifying golden sword light erupted from the body of the human-shaped ferocious beast. After which it was directly disintegrated, transforming into motes of lava that flowed downwards. Qin Wentian stared warily at the sky as he furrowed his brows. The sound of flowing water rang out, only to see 3 ferocious beasts simultaneously emerging from the lava. Their incomparably ferocious eyes were filled with an intense killing intent as they stared at him. An explosive sound rang out in his ears as the 3 ferocious beasts simultaneously lunged towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's body radiated a terrifying sword might, yet his brows were tightly furrowed. If the lava was able to give birth to these ferocious beasts endlessly, how would he be considered to have passed the test set by that supreme beauty? Stepping out, a terrifying suppressive might gushed forth as sword chi materialized in the air. Qin Wentian lifted his palms and with a ferocious wave, a supremely sharp sword erupted forth, instantly penetrating through the bodies of the 3 ferocious beasts that were lunging towards him. The 3 ferocious beasts were directly destroyed, shattered into pieces. Walla walla. A dangerous aura gushed forth unceasingly. The roars of the ferocious beasts didn't stop. This time around it wasn't just Qin Wentian's feet. Even the lava above his head was roaring as ferocious beasts appeared. This time around over 10 ferocious beasts appeared from different directions. Qin Wentian's mind spun rapidly as he tried to think of a countermeasure. Thunderous rumbling sounds rang out as the space trembled. Over 10 ferocious beasts filled with explosive might lunged towards Qin Wentian. If he was an ordinary celestial phenomenon ascendant, he would have no choice but to accept his fate. A cold light flashed in his eyes, akin to a supreme sword. Qin Wentian's attack slammed into the air, causing terrifying buzzing sounds to echo out unceasingly. After which the sharp sword pierced through the air, suppressing everything in its path. The sounds of piercing rang out unceasingly. None of the 10+ ferocious beasts could withstand his attack. His combat prowess far surpassed the first level of celestial phenomenon. Inclining his head, a gigantic sword appeared in Qin Wentian's hands. His silhouette flickered as the gigantic sword pierced through the air. The sound of tens of thousands of swords resonated in unison, as though they wanted to break through the lava in the air. Boom! When the sword chi pierced into the lava, Qin Wentian actually saw those resplendent swords being melted away, becoming a part of the lava. This caused his countenance to turn ashen. If this was the case, if he used his body to attack, he would be melted as well, becoming a part of the lava and dying here. It was as though there was no way out. More and more ferocious beasts were born. Qin Wentian once again unleashed a barrage of attacks, but it was useless. The number of ferocious beasts increased, and in less than an hour, the entire lava pool was filled with ferocious beasts, glaring malevolently at him. There seemed to be no end to all of this. The constellation that appeared wasn't a dreamworld constellation. This constellation that appeared was surrounded by a dense golden halo, indicating that it was the manifestation of an astral soul from the 6th heavenly layer. Within the constellation, there were traces of terrifying sword might, as though there were countless swords hovering within, containing a terrifying destructive might. This constellation was none other than Qin Wentian's 2nd constellation. The Sword Slaughter constellation formed from his king's sharp sword astral soul. Countless ferocious beasts frenziedly rushed towards Qin Wentian, only to see the constellation in the air radiating a resplendent light. From within, countless astral swords slashed downwards, bringing with them an aura of destruction as they erupted forth. Boom boom boom. Numerous ferocious beasts were slaughtered one after another. Qin Wentian stood below the constellation, his countenance extremely unsightly. Even for celestial phenomenon ascendants, their astral energy wasn't limitless. Although it was boundless, If they continued to fight endlessly, their astral energy would be completely depleted sooner or later. The ferocious beasts were slaughtered unceasingly, yet new ones appeared unceasingly. To Qin Wentian, these ferocious beasts were extremely weak. But no matter how weak they were, if they kept on appearing, it would still be fatal. I have to reduce the rate at which my astral energy is depleted. Only then would I be able to persist longer. Qin Wentian silently mused. After which, he actually sat cross-legged in the air as his constellation shone incomparably resplendently. Sword slaughter constellation slaughter! Qin Wentian icily commanded. Numerous terrifying swords descended, suppressing his surroundings, manifesting an incomparably fearsome destructive might that protected him in the center. 10,000 swords descended from the skies, suppressing the space. Countless ferocious beasts rushed over unceasingly, only to be shredded into pieces by the sword qi. Qin Wentian took out his Yuan meteor stones, directly absorbing the astral energy within them to replenish his depleted astral energy. Time flowed by bit by bit. The supreme characters at the banquet were all quietly observing the illusory scenes in the myriad transformations realm. At this moment there were already many experts who chose to withdraw. As a female immortal king, the myriad incarnations immortal kings' killing intent wasn't too heavy. Hence, as long as they were willing to withdraw, she would spare them a path of survival. Those who were eliminated still stood on the immortal mountains, staring at the illusory scenes of others. This myriad transformations art was transparent. Those outside could clearly see everything happening within. Evidently, the myriad incarnations immortal king had done this intentionally. It's very fair, it's the same test for everyone. The weaker ones would be the fastest to be eliminated. Only those with extraordinary combat prowess would be able to persist. The spectators all thought in their hearts. There were no complaints. If they were eliminated, it was only because their combat prowess wasn't strong enough. However, there were some people who were truly powerful. Those ferocious beasts were all at the same cultivation level as them. Being able to kill so many of them meant that one's combat prowess had already transcended that cultivation level. The constellations of some of these little fellows are truly not bad. Without the fusion of multiple true intents, they basically wouldn't be able to block the attacks of these countless ferocious beasts. Even if they fuse multiple true intents together, they still need to transform into a more powerful form. If not, it's simply impossible to kill them all. The scarce moon immortal king laughed. His gaze turned to his descendant, Kei Tianyi, as an expression of satisfaction could be seen on his face. Kei Tianyi's constellation was like a cold moon, radiating boundless coldness. All the ferocious beasts that entered the attack radius of his constellation were instantly frozen. Indeed, I didn't judge wrongly. Scarce moon immortal king, Kei Tianyi is not bad. This way the exhaustion rate wouldn't be too high, and he should be able to persist till the end. Deep Flame laughed. His gaze swept over to Qin Wentian. In truth, in terms of arrogance and self-confidence, Kei Tianyi's eyes weren't any less compared to Qin Wentian. But because Kei Tianyi was originally one of the more famous juniors in the immortal realms, and was also the descendant of the scarce moon immortal king, not to mention that he had a violet gold astral soul, everyone felt that it was only natural for him to win. Speaking of which, only Deep Flame felt that Kei Tianyi was more pleasing to the eye, while Bai Wuya felt that Qin Wentian was more pleasing to the eye. By Wuya, the exhaustion rate of this man's constellation would be extremely fast. Although it wouldn't be a problem for him to reach the top 100, it would be hard for him to enter the top 3. Deep Flame spoke. He was naturally referring to Qin Wentian. The attacking power of Qin Wentian's constellation was extremely strong. Even though it was just an illusion, he could tell that Qin Wentian's constellation was extremely powerful. However, the consumption rate of such a constellation was also extremely high. Chapter 7:18. Time flowed by bit by bit. The exhaustion rate of those in the illusionscape grew greater and greater. And this was only for those with combat prowess that could withstand the attacks of the ferocious beasts. Those who couldn't endure it had long been eliminated. 6 hours later, only 100+ people remained in the illusionscape. And among these 100+ experts, those on the 9th peak were all present. The vast majority of those on the 8th peak were also present, while the rest were all from the 7th peak. As for those below, there wasn't a single person left. None of the 6 immortal mountains were able to remain. These supreme existences of the immortal realms place great importance on perception, believing that this was the foundation of stellar martial cultivators. And reality had proven that their emphasis wasn't without reason. Although those with strong perception might not necessarily be powerful, but for stellar martial cultivators, if one's perception was weak, they would definitely not be very strong. Indeed, I didn't make a mistake. This man's constellation is akin to an abyss of destruction and actually has the ability to devour, directly devouring those ferocious beasts that attacked him. Deep Flame stared at the first young man who ascended the 9th peak. This young man's name was Black Peak and he was extremely powerful. His constellation was akin to an abyss of destruction, pitch black, capable of devouring everything. The constellations of these 4 aren't bad. The third one isn't bad either. Someone stared at the third person who ascended the 9th peak. Right now, his ruthlessness was completely revealed. There was actually a screen of resplendent saber light enveloping his entire body. As long as the ferocious beasts neared him, they would all be annihilated. The second one isn't bad either. 10,000 swords cascaded down from his constellation, suppressing everything. Although we can't sense it, the power behind it should be extremely strong. At the very least, in front of those at the same level as him, there are very few who would be able to match him. One must know that his cultivation base is only at the first level of celestial phenomenon. This might be his first constellation. An immortal king stared at Qin Wentian as he spoke. These 4 were the most conspicuous, attracting the attention of others. However, these immortal kings all had different preferences. Hence, their opinions of these 4 were different as well. Just like Deep Flame and Bai Wuya. On the 8th peak, there are also a few more outstanding fellows. Look at that young man in white. He is also at the first level of celestial phenomenon. His constellation is also not bad. There was an immortal king whose eyes were golden in color. His eyes gleamed with a terrifying light as he stared at one of the immortal kings on the 8th peak. He's indeed very powerful. In the illusory constellation, he's the only one who didn't rely on attacks to persist. In that illusory constellation he was everywhere, but it was like his true body had never appeared before. No matter how many ferocious beasts tried to kill him, they couldn't kill him. Maybe this constellation is the greatest delusion. His true body has never appeared before, and the moment those ferocious beasts attacked, they were all trapped within the illusion like headless flies. It's truly not easy for someone at the first level of celestial phenomenon to be able to manifest such a constellation. Myriad Incarnations Immortal King. If you want to determine the victor quickly, I'm afraid you have to increase the strength of your attacks. Deep Flame's deep eyes stared at the female immortal king who had her eyes closed, as though hoping to see the final rankings as soon as possible, to see who could last the longest. The female immortal king nodded her head lightly. An instant later, the attacks of all the ferocious beasts in the illusory realm intensified. At this moment there were only 100 people who could persist in the illusory realm. However, these immortal kings naturally wouldn't give up just like that. This was the Eastern Sage Great Emperor's disciple selection. He naturally had to choose the most outstanding one. Only those who could stand out from the rest of the tests would have the qualifications to become the Eastern Sage Great Emperor's disciple. In addition, there were quite a few outstanding characters among these people. These immortal kings also wanted to accept them as disciples. If the Eastern Sage Great Emperor didn't fancy them, they could also accept them as disciples. Lu Ziyan couldn't persist any longer at the 97th rank, while Zai Xian exited at the 73rd rank. Staring at Qin Wentian and the others who were still persisting, both of them had different expressions on their faces. Zai Xian's countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. Initially, he wanted to use this chance to get the experts of the Royal Sacred Sect to surround Qin Wentian. But after the second round of tests, other than him, he didn't know how many of them would be able to enter the top 100. In any case, there was no one left in the illusory realm, and he didn't know if there was anyone who could persist until the 73rd rank to the 100th rank. Not too long after, those on the 7th peak were all eliminated as well. There were still 15 participants on the 8th peak, and 4 participants from the 9th peak. The ferocious beasts in the illusory realm seemed to have grown stronger. Those who were eliminated silently mused. These fellows were truly demon-level geniuses, to actually be able to persist until now. They were all characters with unrivaled combat prowess at the same cultivation level. They couldn't help but wonder what would happen when they fought against each other. Qin Wentian and the others had no idea what was happening outside. They only had a single thought in their hearts. Since this was a test personally conducted by the Immortal Kings, it would naturally be fair. The attacks he endured were the same for the others as well. Hence, what they needed to do was to try their best to persist for as long as possible. At this moment, Qin Wentian was still absorbing the astral energy from the Yuan meteor stones. However, this rate of absorption was far slower than the rate of consumption. In a battle between stellar martial cultivators, any and all attacks would be based on the consumption of astral energy. The attacks of the magma beasts are getting more and more intense, Qin Wentian silently mused. But even so, these magma beasts still couldn't withstand his sword slaughter constellation. Although the attacks of these magma beasts had already reached the second level of celestial phenomenon, as long as they neared the sword slaughter constellation, they would still be crushed into pieces. These 5 fellows are truly not bad. The attacks of the magma beasts are getting more and more ferocious, but their constellations are still able to withstand it easily. The scarce moon Immortal King laughed. The 4 participants on the 9th peak, in addition to the one on the 8th peak, were the 5 that received the most attention. Since the Eastern Sage Great Emperor wanted to accept a disciple, he would most probably choose one of these 5. Truly not bad. I wonder which of them the Eastern Sage Great Emperor would like. Another Immortal King replied. Everyone had their own views and opinions. These 5 participants all had their own preferences. Who the Eastern Sage Great Emperor would accept as a disciple, it all depended on who the Eastern Sage Great Emperor found pleasing to his eyes. If the Eastern Sage Great Emperor was satisfied and had good talent, the Eastern Sage Great Emperor would definitely accept them. Time flowed by, and as the magma beasts grew more and more powerful, more and more participants could no longer endure and were eliminated. However, these 5 participants were as stable as Mt. Tai. K. Tiany's constellation was in the form of moons, exuding a chilling coldness that enveloped his entire body. No magma beasts could even get close to him. Black Peak was the first to ascend the 9th peak. The abyss of annihilation could devour everything. Qin Wentian was the second person to ascend the 9th peak. The sword might from his constellation slammed down, killing everything in its path. Yang was the third to ascend the 9th peak. The constellation of his constellation was like a hellish saber formation. Other than these 4, there was also a person from the 8th peak who was extremely dazzling. The moment the magma beasts rushed in, they were all trapped within. It was as though he had set up an illusionary realm within the illusionary realm created by the myriad incarnations Immortal King. This person and Qin Wentian were the 2 that the countless experts in the Royal Sacred Region paid the most attention to. Because both of them were local geniuses of the Royal Sacred Region. Who would have thought that 2 of the top 3 rankers of the Immortal Martial Realm would actually be so powerful? The value of the ranking monument this time around is truly high, far surpassing the past. There's no need to say much about the first ranker, Qin Wentian. He was able to stand above the era-suppressing geniuses. As for this Hua Taishu, although he doesn't have too many glorious battle achievements, and is much more low-profile compared to Qin Wentian, he's also extremely powerful. Gu Lufeng has already been missing for a long time, and since the immortal realms exist, there's a high possibility that Gu Lufeng has already gone there. The spectators of the Royal Sacred Region were all thinking in their hearts. So it turned out that the 5th person who received the most attention from the Immortal Kings was none other than the second ranker of the Immortal Martial Realm, Hua Taishu. Right now, he had also broken through to the Celestial Phenomenon Realm. Myriad Incarnations Immortal King, seems like we have to increase the strength of our attacks. Deep Flame spoke. The Myriad Incarnations Immortal King shook her head. No need. Next, we will test their tenacity and see which of them can last longer without knowing the strength of the others. Might as well. Deep Flame nodded. He didn't say anything more. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Right now, out of the countless stellar martial cultivators on the 9 mountains, only 5 remained. The gazes of the others were all fixated on these 5. How powerful they were actually able to last until now. Next, let's see who can last no longer. Deep Flame stared at the 5 of them. Right now, Even the immortal kings had expressions of interest on their faces as they stared below. The ones who persisted until the very end were indeed the 5 experts they were looking for. Behind Keitiani, a violet gold light flashed. That was the color of his astral soul. An incomparably cold and desolate moon hung in the air behind Keitiani, causing the radius of the ice seal to expand even further. Yang was also very powerful. His saber light blazed brilliantly as a screen of light enveloped his body, as though it was indestructible. On Black Peak's body, the destructive might of the abyss was terrifying to the extreme. It was as though abyssal flames had appeared. The illusionary constellation created by Hua Taishu still had no way to break through. Countless lava beasts were trapped within. Qin Wentian, who was sitting cross-legged, seemed incomparably demonic, as the power of his bloodline could be faintly felt. 5 days passed and these 5 people were still persisting, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Yang frowned. The screen of light around him flickered in and out of existence, as though it was fluctuating. This caused the hearts of the immortal kings in the banquet to tremble. Seems like Yang might be the first to give up. Reality was just like what they had guessed. After a period of time, Yang opened his eyes. At the very least, he should be able to enter the top 3. Senior, please let me out. Yang inclined his head as he spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, everything vanished. Yang stood on the mountain peak and glanced to his left and right. His eyes narrowed as an unsightly expression appeared on his face. The other 3 on the 9th mountain peak were actually still persisting. Bai Wuya glanced at Deep Flame, but he didn't say anything. That silent gaze of his seemed to be mocking him for his poor judgment. The fellow you valued has already released the power of his bloodline earlier, but Keitiani and the top ranker haven't. Maybe they still have some trump cards. Deep Flame coldly snorted when he saw the look in Bai Wuya's eyes. Chapter 719. Bai Wuya didn't say anything. It was as though he couldn't be bothered with Deep Flame. This Deep Flame kept finding fault with him, and no matter what he said, Deep Flame would always have his own explanation. Since both parties had different views, there was no need to argue. Let's just wait quietly for the result. From Qin Wentian's eyes, he could see a kind of obsession. It could be described as arrogance, an obsession of madness. Also, Qin Wentian's cultivation base was only at the first level of celestial phenomenon. Bai Wuya had always felt that Qin Wentian's perception and resistance to pressure wasn't any weaker compared to Black Peak and Keitiani. Not only that, he was even younger. In that case, there was no reason for him to lose to Qin Wentian. Taking a step back, so what if he was defeated? A test couldn't represent everything. The talent of these people were all outstanding, but who would be able to walk further on the path of immortality? This wasn't something that could be determined by a single test. Keitiani's body glowed with a violet gold light as his ice-sealed domain expanded once again. It seemed like he could still persist for a very long time. Within Black Peak's body, his bloodline thrummed as a terrifying blood-colored light enveloped the area. The devouring force grew even more ferocious. He tried his best to control the consumption of his astral energy, using the power of his bloodline to replace his constellation, slowing down the rate of consumption. Qin Wentian was still being suppressed by his constellation. Among the remaining 4, his and Hua Taishu's cultivation bases were the weakest, but the lava beasts they faced were also weaker. Hence, the rate of consumption was relatively balanced. However, Qin Wentian's advantage of having 5 Yuanfu was fully unleashed, allowing him to endure even more exhaustion. Time flowed by, the remaining 4 continued to challenge their limits, reaching an unimaginable level. At this moment, Black Peak's entire body seemed to have transformed into a dark abyss as his bloodline thrummed frenziedly. Upon seeing this scene, the countenances of the spectators all froze. Seems like Black Peak wouldn't be able to persist for much longer. In the illusionscape Hua Taishu was in, the constellation he created also seemed to be fluctuating. Over at Keitiani's side, his violet gold constellation shone resplendently. At this instant, a terrifying energy gushed forth from his body as a cold moon enveloped him within, as though he was in the midst of a cold moon. Keitiani has not reached his limit yet. The spectators mused silently. At this moment, Black Peak and Hua Taishu both exited the illusionscape created by the myriad incarnations immortal king. When they stood on the mountain peak, they discovered that there were still 2 more participants who had yet to exit. Their eyes couldn't help but flash with bewilderment. This was especially so for Blackpeak. He was aiming to be the first to ascend the 9th mountain. But this time around it seemed that he had failed. Only 2 left. Only Qin Wentian and Kei Tianyi were still persisting. This caused countless people in the royal sacred region to sigh in their hearts. It was yet another genius who could dazzle this era. When he contended against the geniuses of the immortal realms, he was still trying his best to be the most dazzling. At this time the others should be almost done. However, I want to show them how long I can last. Kei Tianyi slowly spoke. After that, numerous crescent moons appeared, wrapping him within. Above these crescent moons, streams of freezing air flowed down. The lava beasts roared as they rushed forward. But the moment they came close, they were instantly sealed in ice. Qin Wentian could also sense that his Yuanfu was on the verge of exhaustion. He mused silently in his heart as he chanted an incantation. Streams of white runic light shone brilliantly, illuminating his entire body. Resplendent runes could be seen on his body as the white qi flowed about, resembling wisps of white candlelight. The fiery light seemed very weak, but as Qin Wentian chanted the incantation, that seemingly weak fiery light erupted forth with a might that incinerated all the lava beasts that got too close to him into nothingness. What ability is this? The incantation he chanted actually has such might? The countenances of the spectators froze. This Qin Wentian was actually able to persist until now. He was truly powerful. That white fiery light seemed to be extremely powerful. Could it be that he had activated an immortal art? What's that? Even the supreme characters at the banquet felt bewildered. The white flame circulating around Qin Wentian's body. Was that the power of an innate technique? Qin Wentian didn't feel his blood surging. Instead, he was incomparably calm, exuding a solemn aura. His constellation vanished as numerous Yuan meteor stones appeared around him, unceasingly absorbing the energy into his body. Runic light flickered on the surface of his body, and the fiery light flowing around him actually caused the lava beasts to shrink back, not daring to approach him. The myriad incarnations immortal king should know what that is, right? The gazes of the spectators landed on the female immortal king. Maybe it's some sort of powerful immortal art. It's extremely powerful. The female immortal king closed her eyes as she spoke. Although Qin Wentian was in her illusionscape, she couldn't sense that at this moment, Qin Wentian's blood was surging. At this moment, Qin Wentian's body was extremely calm. Only the runic light on the surface of his skin shone brightly. The eruption of bloodline energy wasn't like this, hence, even the myriad incarnations immortal king had misjudged him. This immortal art seems to be extraordinary. No wonder he can persist on. Deep Flame mumbled. He glanced at Kei Tianyi again. Both of them were still persisting. Time flowed by bit. The atmosphere on the 9 mountains was extremely quiet. The spectators stared at Qin Wentian and Kei Tianyi, feeling somewhat uneasy in their hearts. They have already persisted for a very long time, much longer compared to the others. It's time to end this, Kei Tianyi silently mused. After which, he opened his eyes and spoke. I should be number 1, right? Senior, please allow me to exit. The immortal kings all had strange expressions on their faces. After which, the myriad incarnations immortal king released Kei Tianyi from her illusionscape. And just as a look of satisfaction flashed in Kei Tianyi's eyes, he noticed that Qin Wentian was still immersed in the illusionscape as the smile on his face abruptly froze. There was someone who persisted longer than him, although there was only one person. Kei Tianyi's eyes flashed with reluctance. But after that, he drew in a deep breath as he emotionlessly spoke. What a pity, I can still persist on. I initially thought that there would be no one else, but who would have thought that there would be someone who could persist to this extent? I was too careless. Qin Wentian didn't know what Kei Tianyi was thinking. Just like what Bai Wuya had predicted, Qin Wentian's determination was far stronger than one could imagine. Retreat? Unless he couldn't persist any longer, as long as he could still persist, he wouldn't give up. Hence 1 day, 2 days time flowed by. Qin Wentian had no intentions of giving up. The heart of the myriad incarnations immortal king trembled as a thought appeared in her mind. If this continued on, would this young man be able to persist on? How stubborn was he? Myriad incarnations, it's already over. There's no need to continue. Deep Flame calmly spoke. Sadly, Tianyi was too careless. If not, I don't know what the ending would be. Victory is victory, defeat is defeat. Why would Tianyi be careless but this young man isn't? Before this, you said that he lacked tempering, but now it seems that his will is the strongest. How do you explain this? Bai Wuya faintly spoke, causing Deep Flame's aura to fluctuate as a terrifying destructive might swept over. Even though everyone here was an immortal king, they could still feel how powerful that pressure was. This Deep Flame was an immortal king war general under the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. He was truly powerful. His killing intent was extremely intense. Bai Wuya is right. For this round it can be said that my judgment was wrong. Deep Flame laughed. That destructive pressure disappeared in an instant, but Bai Wuya's gaze did not waver at all. He did not even look at Deep Flame at all. Qin Wentian finally broke free from the illusionscape. It was the Myriad Incarnations Immortal King who took the initiative to let him out. The immortal sense of the Myriad Incarnations Immortal King dissipated. Qin Wentian glanced at his surroundings as he steeled his heart, knowing that he had persisted till the end. At this moment, Dong Shangting walked towards Bai Wuya as he spoke. Senior Bai, for the remaining 100 participants, you can help me test them and bring the remaining 9 here. How about it? That's simple. Bai Wuya spoke. After which, a strand of immortal sense gushed out, instantly arriving above the 9 mountain peaks. The White Robe Immortal King stood arrogantly in the air, exuding a terrifying might that enveloped the 100 participants who passed the test. He coldly spoke. Before this, the Myriad Incarnations Immortal King selected 100 participants, but I only have 9 left. I'm not as patient as the Myriad Incarnations Immortal King. For the remaining 9, if you don't wish to die, just retreat. Don't waste my time or I will kill until only 9 remain. The White Robe Immortal King's voice was so cold that it caused the hearts of everyone to shudder. For the 100 participants, he killed 91, killing until only 9 remained. Even Tianyi was stunned. In the next instant, the White Robe Immortal King waved his hands as a terrifying sound wave blasted out. Qin Wentian's mind rumbled. He felt that his body was about to be torn apart. His soul was about to shatter as his eardrums bled blood. On the 9 mountain peaks, over 100 participants directly coughed out blood. Not a single one of them survived. This seat is a man of his words. The White Robe Immortal King waved his hands again. Bolts of lightning shot out, causing the crowd to feel as though their souls were about to disperse. Many of them even felt despair. For those who didn't pass the test earlier, their hearts trembled as they stared at the White Robe Immortal King in the air. He was too tyrannical and direct, killing 91 participants, leaving only 9. He didn't care about the test. There was no such thing as luck. Qin Wentian's entire body trembled. The pain of his soul being torn apart was truly enough to claim his life. Not only for Qin Wentian, Tianyi was the same as well. His expression was extremely ugly to behold as he stared at Bai Wuya in the air. This madman, how is this a test? This was a massacre, killing until only 9 remained. Even if he was the descendant of the scarce Moon Immortal King, Bai Wuya showed no mercy at all. No one knew who would die first. Die! Bai Wuya waved his hands again. A scream of misery rang out, sounding extremely miserable in the silence of the 9 mountain peaks, causing the hearts of the 100 participants to shudder. I can't give up. Qin Wentian guarded his heart and mind, chanting a chant as his entire body shone with runic light. The white light was like the fire of his life. Bai Wuya unleashed another attack. This time around there was actually someone who directly collapsed, dying a miserable death. Qin Wentian's will was incomparably tough, but he still directly collapsed to the ground. His countenance was pale, but he still inclined his head and stared at Bai Wuya in the air. I withdraw. A howl rang out. I withdraw. After the first voice rang out, more and more voices rang out. There was no test in the world that was more tyrannical than a massacre. Very good, you guys chose this path yourselves. As long as you withdraw, you can live. But if you don't, it means that you are handing your life over to me. This is the path you chose, so you should bear the consequences yourself. This seat won't be responsible for your life or death. Bai Wuya's voice was ice cold. Even those immortal kings at the banquet were stunned by his methods. This was truly a madman. Chapter 720. Bai Wuya's way of doing things is truly different from the masses. The myriad incarnations' immortal king's eyes flashed with a bright light. Indeed, the one who persisted till the end in your illusionscape was someone Bai Wuya regarded highly. He was the only one who didn't rest, while the others all got some time to rest. However, Bai Wuya treated everyone equally and directly attacked. This was disadvantageous to the person he regarded highly, yet he didn't show any favoritism at all. An old immortal king with a transcendent demeanor praised. This old immortal king was the oldest in the banquet, even older compared to the Eastern sage immortal emperor. The people of the immortal realms had already forgotten his name and directly referred to him as the undying immortal king. If one wants to enter the tutelage of His Majesty, one naturally has to be extraordinary. Maybe Bai Wuya did this because he wanted to see how extraordinary Qin Wentian was. If he couldn't, given Bai Wuya's personality, he would rather admit that his judgment was wrong. But if Qin Wentian still persisted, he would surely gain more impressions. The immortal kings laughed, not caring about the expression on the deep flame immortal king's face. Earlier, the destructive might deep flame unleashed had already caused them to be extremely unhappy. Who were these people seated here? All of them were immortal kings. For those who could reach this level, which of them wouldn't be proud and arrogant? If you deep flame want to fight against Bai Wuya, go ahead and do so, don't affect others. What's the point of unleashing his might against everyone here? They came here because of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. The Deep Flame Immortal King was merely a subordinate of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. There was no need to give him too much face. Seems like there are many who regard this young man highly. The Deep Flame Immortal King's eyes flickered with destructive flames as a smile that was not a smile appeared on his face. What's the point? This old man is already old and has no plans to accept a disciple. I'm just guessing who the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor would choose. Although the Undying Immortal King didn't fear Deep Flame, his personality was that of a good-natured old man. He wouldn't target anyone. Let's see. The beautiful myriad incarnations Immortal King smiled, causing the hearts of people to stir. After all, she was a true celestial maiden. Bai Wuya was still waving his hands. Every single attack was filled with a true killing force that could truly destroy one's willpower. Once one's willpower could no longer withstand it, one's life would be directly destroyed and killed by him. After a few more times, there were a few who initially wanted to retreat but were too hesitant. They were all killed as their life auras dissipated. The people on the 9 mountains stared at their corpses as their hearts trembled. Although they wanted to retreat, their wills were already on the verge of collapse. Yet they were still hesitating. How could they withstand the killing intent of the white-robed immortal king? At this moment, Qin Wentian laid powerlessly on the ground, slumping on the mountain peak. Not only him, none of the other 4 on the 9th peak were still able to stand. All of them had collapsed onto the ground. This was a battle of wills. Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the figure in the air. His entire body was covered in white runic light, maintaining the flames of his life. His will was indestructible, incomparably resolute. When he stared at the white-robe immortal king, there was no trace of hatred in his eyes. In fact, there was even a hint of yearning in his eyes. He hoped that one day, he too would be able to achieve such magnificence. I withdraw. More and more people shouted. Being able to enter the top 100, all of them had extraordinary combat prowess. But when faced with a true killing test like this, in addition to the fact that no one knew if they would be able to survive until the end of the 9 participants, not many of them dared to risk their lives. In addition, from the perspectives of many, there were already 4 participants on the 9th peak. They couldn't even be compared to those on the 9th peak after 2 consecutive tests, and the Eastern Sage Great Emperor only accepted a single disciple. Their hopes were already extremely bleak, and there was no need for them to risk their lives. With such thoughts in their minds, their wills would naturally weaken. If they didn't withdraw, they would only die. The white-robe immortal king who was in the air lifted his hand once more. With a wave of his hand, his killing intent gushed forth as another person was killed. I withdraw. At the same time, there were a few people who were on the verge of despair as they shouted out. After which, the white-robe immortal king halted his actions and turned his gaze downwards as he spoke. I initially wanted 9 participants, but there were a few who chose to withdraw at the same time. Right now there are only 8 of you remaining. In that case, the 8 of you shall follow me to the banquet." As the sound of the white robe immortal king's voice faded, the faces of those who chose to withdraw earlier turned ashen as they felt boundless regret. They had fought for so long until now. If they didn't choose to withdraw earlier, they would be able to enter the immortal palace. However, they couldn't endure it any longer and chose to withdraw. Who could be blamed for this? They could only blame their own wills for not being resolute enough. "Follow me." The white robe immortal king waved his hand as a surge of immortal energy enveloped the 8 of them. After which, a bright light flashed as 8 of them directly vanished from this place. Among them, the 9th peak was completely empty. The 4 participants who chose to ascend the 9th peak had all persevered. The 5 with the most outstanding performance during the test of the female immortal king have all persevered. Seems like the probability of the Eastern Sage Great Emperor choosing a disciple is even higher. Everyone mused in their hearts. Since the Eastern Sage Great Emperor was accepting disciples, he would naturally choose the most outstanding ones. Since the 5 of them performed outstandingly in every test, the probability of them becoming the Eastern Sage Great Emperor's disciple was naturally the highest. However, at this moment, the 8 participants who were brought to the banquet weren't feeling too good either. All 8 of them were panting, feeling extremely weak. The immortal sense of the white robe immortal king vanished. They only saw him sitting at a certain location in the banquet, quietly drinking his wine as though what happened earlier had nothing to do with him. Only to see that at this moment, the undying immortal king waved his hands as a resplendent green light shone on the 8 participants. Waves of life energy cleansed their bodies, and in a short instant, Qin Wentian and the others felt their bodies being filled with an intense vitality, as though they were filled with boundless energy. This feeling is truly marvelous, Qin Wentian silently mused. He truly couldn't hold on any longer. It was like rain after a long drought. It was too comfortable. His gaze swept over the people at the banquet. Many of them were supreme characters with unfathomable depths. Their eyes seemed to be able to see right through him. Dong Shengting walked over. The gazes of the immortal kings landed on him as they smiled. "Does the Eastern Sage Great Emperor still need us to take the test?" "No need, everyone has already passed the test. My royal father has seen everything and it's already enough. If he wants to accept disciples, he naturally has his own plans." Dong Shengting shook his head. After which, his gaze landed on the statue of the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor. Beams of light flashed as the statue actually emanated a faint aura of life. After which, the statue transformed into a real person. The supreme characters at the banquet all stood up and bowed to the statue. "We pay our respects to the Eastern Sage Great Emperor." At this instant, these arrogant immortal kings all retracted their arrogance. Regardless of particle worlds or immortal realms, they all revered the strong. Although these people were immortal kings, they were nothing in front of the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor. At their level, the difference of a single level was undoubtedly a heavenly moat. "Everyone, please be seated." The will of the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor manifested. He sat on the host seat and stared at Qin Wentian and the other 7 as he spoke. "All of you, come up here. What are your names?" "Your Majesty, my name is Keitiani." "Your Majesty, my name is Black Peak." Everyone reported their names, including Qin Wentian. Their attitudes were all extremely respectful. The Dongsheng Heaven Emperor inclined his head slightly as he swept his gaze over everyone. His eyes seemed to be able to see through the souls of people. "Your performances are all not bad, but this time around, I will only accept a single disciple. As for the others, if any of you are interested, you can also accept them as your disciples." The Dongsheng Heaven Emperor spoke. "Since your Majesty is so interested, I'm also willing to accept a disciple." Deep Flame smiled as he stared at the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor. "Deep Flame, do you have the time to teach others?" The Dongsheng Heaven Emperor laughed. The dangerous Deep Flame actually had a silly smile on his face as he replied. "This time around, Deep Flame will definitely do his best." "Haha. I'm really looking forward to it." "Deep Flame, who do you think I should accept as a disciple out of these 8? The Dongsheng Heaven Emperor stared at Deep Flame as he asked. "How would I dare to comment on your Majesty's matters?" Deep Flame replied. "Since I asked you to suggest something, just do it. Don't talk nonsense." The Dongsheng Heaven Emperor unhappily spoke. In that case, if Deep Flame is so bold, I feel that Keichani is not bad. Deep Flame spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, the scarce moon immortal king felt joy in his heart as an expression of gratitude appeared on his face. Just this sentence alone was enough to make the scarce moon immortal king owe Deep Flame a favor. The Dongsheng Heaven Emperor didn't express his opinion. He turned to Bai Wuya and spoke. Bai Wuya, you are the youngest here. Before this, I saw that your attitude was different from Deep Flame's. What do you think? Your Majesty will naturally accept disciples based on your heart. If you want to ask me, I would say that Qin Wentian is more pleasing to the eye. If you want to talk about the reason, he is the youngest. Bai Wuya laughed. Qin Wentian started, feeling somewhat taken aback. Before this, the moment he exited the illusionscape, Bai Wuya attacked him, not giving him any face at all. But he didn't expect that Bai Wuya would actually speak up for him, as though he thought highly of him. Indeed, things cannot be judged on the surface. Makes sense. The Dongsheng Heaven Emperor glanced at Qin Wentian before turning to the Myriad Incarnations Immortal King and smiled. Fairy Myriad Incarnations? What about you? I prefer Hua Taishu. His cultivation method is somewhat similar to mine. The Myriad Incarnations Immortal King laughed. Old fellow, you are already so old. Why don't you give me some suggestions? The Dongsheng Heaven Emperor turned to the Undying Immortal King. The eyes of the Undying Immortal King flickered with the light of wisdom. He stroked his beard and smiled. All of them are not bad. Your Majesty should already have a decision in your heart. You old fox. The Dongsheng Heaven Emperor laughed. After which, his gaze roamed about the 8 of them. Finally, his eyes landed on Qin Wentian as he smiled. Qin Wentian, are you willing to enter my tutelage? As the sound of his voice faded, the countenances of the crowd froze. Many stared at Qin Wentian with envy. In the end, did the Eastern Sage Great Emperor choose him? Qin Wentian's performance was truly dazzling. Since the Eastern Sage Great Emperor chose him, it should be because he already had his eyes on Qin Wentian. In addition, his talent was also very high.